Chapter 4687. Yi Qian memorized all the portraits of the missing girls. She also memorized the colors and styles of clothes that the missing girls wore before they left, as well as the colors and styles of clothes that they brought with them. Now, she quickly searched her brain based on the colors and styles of the dresses. In less than a minute, a girl's portrait clearly entered her mind, as if it was a copy. Yi Jian closed her eyes gently as she curled her fingers. The missing girl had a knee-length dress that was similar to this. Could it be that this skeleton was her? She needed to confirm it again. She couldn't be sure, just based on a similar dress. She needed to confirm it again. With her heart trembling, Yi Qian walked closer with light footsteps. She walked directly to the skeleton's leg. The girl's left pinky had been injured when she was young, so her 5 fingers had become 4. This was the best evidence to identify the skeleton. As Yi Qian approached, she slowly squatted down and gently moved away the withered grass covering the leg. She saw a pile of scattered bones. Some were small, some were big. The bones of the entire foot were messy. It was impossible to identify them immediately. She needed to examine the bones carefully. In order to find evidence that could prove her identity, Yi Qian needed to examine it closely, but she also needed to avoid being seen by the people outside. Other than moving the withered grass, Yi Qian didn't even move the scattered bones. Time passed little by little. Yi Qian, who had a good understanding of the human body structure and bones, started to assemble the scattered bones in her mind. Starting from the heel, she assembled them one by one, piece by piece. Every time she looked at the bones in her mind, she needed to assemble the left foot. Her eyes searched back and forth. Finally, a complete left leg appeared in her mind. At that moment, Yi Qian's clear eyes were filled with dark clouds that even the wind couldn't blow away. One of the missing girls had been found, but it was just a skeleton. After wiping away the traces she left behind, Yi Qian slowly retreated behind the wooden door. From time to time, she would raise her hand and knock on the door, weakly shouting, "Let her out. She wants to go home." The 2 men standing guard outside did not pay any attention to him, nor did they order Yi Qian to shut up. They stood guard like wooden stakes. After about half an hour, Yi Qian leaned against the wooden door and closed his eyes, taking a light nap for the past few days. Where would she go next? Everything was unknown. She only knew that she would face more dangers and difficulties in the future. Yi Jian, who had been sleeping soundly for 2 hours, heard footsteps coming from outside. She opened her eyes and began to knock on the wooden door that was not even stained with dust. Her voice was high and low as she kept repeating, "She wants to go home." The iron lock was opened, and the sound of the chains rattling could be heard. Yi Qian got up and banged on the wooden door even harder. She was panicking and anxious. Ji kicked the wooden door open. The wooden door bounced back and hit Yi Qian's head. She cried out in pain. Ji used his foot to block the wooden door that bounced back. He spun the scimitar in his hand skillfully in his palm. Standing at the door, he looked at the Chinese girl whose head was red from the impact and said lazily with a fake smile, "Let's go. I'll send you home." Who would believe him? Yi Qian naturally wouldn't believe him. She knew that he was lying to her. She didn't say anything. She hugged her bag tightly with tears in her eyes. The fear on her face pleased Ji. "You know I won't let you go home. Why are you still screaming? Eat the sesame seed cake." Chapter 4688. She threw the pancake wrapped in leaves at Yi Qian's feet. The leaves fell, and the pancake, which had been baked in an iron pan, fell to the ground. One side was covered with dust. Yi Qian was hungry. She cried as she picked up the pancake. She ate it as she got into the car heading into the mountains. The driver was still the same driver, but the hat he always wore was replaced with a cowboy hat. The front was rolled up so that his vision would not be affected. When she got in the car, Yi Qian glanced at the driver from the corner of her eyes. She saw the green hair on the driver's forehead. It was the green at the roots of his hair after he shaved it off. Before he changed his hat, she clearly saw that there was a circle of greasy black hair around the brim of the hat that had not been washed for a few days. Looking down, Yi Qian quietly hid the suspicion that flashed in her eyes. The car, which had been parked for about 2 hours, started again and continued to drive into the depths of the mountains. In the evening, the sky had already darkened. The rolling mountains were like sleeping behemoths, blending into the cold night. Finally, the mountains and the sky merged into one, like a ferocious beast with its mouth wide open, waiting for its prey to walk into its trap. The car seemed to have reached the end of the mountain road, but the car did not stop and continue to move forward. The rumbling sound of the engine startled the birds that were resting at night. They flapped their wings and rushed into the dark sky. Yiqian's pupils suddenly shrank as the birds flew away. It was not that there was no road, but a completely hidden mountain road that could avoid being photographed by satellites. There were more than 3,000 villages and towns of various sizes in the Golden Triangle. Due to the special geography, there were many deep valleys and rapid streams between the mountains. There were also bottomless canyons and endless cliffs. It was because of this special terrain that there was a large traffic dead zone. The possibility of outsiders wanting to enter was zero. The traffic dead zone not only prevented the villagers living in the mountains from interacting with the outside world, but also prevented the country from limited management and in-depth control of the villages. The complex terrain provided a natural refuge for countless drug traffickers. People from the outside could not enter, but people from the inside could go outside. At this time, Yiqian's car drove into a hidden mountain road that was only accessible by one car. The side of the road was a small mountain road with a cliff. Along with the bumpy mountain road, they drove past cliffs and rivers. After 6 days of driving, the car was so bumpy that it felt like it was about to fall apart. Finally, they arrived at a village that was guarded by heavy guns. The stronghold was located at a relatively high altitude, and the fog-shrouded stronghold looked more like a place of cultivation secluded from the rest of the world. It did not look like a stronghold with a large number of poisonous goods coming and going. From here, they entered the core area of the Golden Triangle. The core area did not refer to a specific place, but it referred to a place where a large amount of drugs were sold. The driver got out of the car first. He went to the front of the pagoda in front of the village, put his palms together, and bowed piously. Grabbing Yiqian's collar, Emoji got off the car and walked to the front of the pagoda before letting go of Yiqian's collar. He also put his palms together and bowed piously. The Burmese people were better than the Buddhas, so they created the phenomenon of rich Buddhas are poor people. The top of the Buddhist pagoda in front of the village was made of pure gold, but had lost its golden luster due to age. The two of them did not enter the village immediately. They first greeted the whistle with a gun and stood outside quietly. After waiting for half an hour, someone finally came out. What surprised Yiqian was that the person who came out was a monk with a shaved head, a thin layer of green hair covering his scalp, and wearing a khaki kasaya. Chapter 4689. Monk? She looked at the pagoda outside. Could it be a temple? Burmese people believed in Buddhism, and Buddhism was the national religion. Some Burmese even worshipped monks to show their piety. Could it be that the village was not a village, but a temple? Why were there whistles with guns? Was it because a drug lord had come to the temple? The appearance of the monk caused Yiqian's train of thought to stop for a few seconds. However, the monk who walked over did not behave like a monk. Even his face was very fierce. Yiqian, who had been silently observing, immediately realized that she might have met a fake monk. Would a real monk have a gun in his waist? A monk's 6 senses were pure. How could he carry a gun? There was no information about a fake monk in the information provided by Captain Deng. The monk in the khaki kasaya looked at Maji. He did not know Maji, but he did not ask for his identity. Instead, he glanced at the driver, frowned, and asked a few questions in the local language. The driver lowered his head slightly. He was not as cold as he had been in the village 2 days ago. His posture was very humble as he answered. Yiqian noticed that the driver looked at Maji after a few words. After a few more words, the fake monk's furrowed brows finally relaxed. With the driver's introduction, the fake monk started talking to Maji. At the end of his words, Emoji pushed Yiqian, who had been lowering her head and looked like she was scared out of her wits, to the front of the monk. Even his expression became flattering. A very beautiful Chinese girl. There's no problem. Even if she dies, nothing will happen, he said aloud. And the fake monk listened. He glanced at the driver from time to time. When the driver nodded slightly, a faint smile appeared on his fierce face. When Maji saw the smile on the fake monk's face, he secretly sighed in relief. Yi Qian, who had been pushed in front of the three people, continued to lower her head. Her slightly trembling shoulders showed that she was very, very scared. The fake monk and Maji had a short conversation. Due to the language barrier, Yi Qian could not understand what they were saying. She was even more eager to learn Burmese. When the two of them ended their conversation, Yi Qian, who was being shoved away, saw the driver take off the cowboy hat that he hadn't taken off for several days. She saw that the driver had a bald head like the fake monk, but the roots of his hair were bluish-black. Is the driver outside, also using the identity of a monk as a cover? Yi Qian's eyes darkened as she entered the mountain stronghold guarded by whistles and spears. Just as she had guessed, the mountain stronghold was indeed a temple built deep in the mountains for the villagers to worship. The temple was not a real temple. Naturally, the monks guarding the temple were not real monks either. Apart from the Buddhist pagoda, which was a real Buddhist pagoda, everything else was a disguise for drug dealers. Yi Qian was dragged out and locked up alone. Emoji left with the fake monk and did not appear until daybreak the next day. 2 days later, Yi Qian, who had been imprisoned, seemed to have been forgotten. Other than someone who brought him a bowl of water and a pancake, no one else came by. On the third day, someone came to deliver water and pancakes. Then, for 2 consecutive days, no one was seen. It seemed that they were not really regretful. They just did not want to give Yi Qian too much food and water in case she had the strength to escape. On the 7th day, a bowl of water and a pancake were delivered punctually. On the 8th day, she was starved again. For 8 consecutive days, Yi Qian's activities were limited to the small room where she was locked up. During the day, she was accompanied by the sun, and at night, there were insects chirping. It was so quiet that it seemed like she was the only person in the mountain stronghold. On the 8th day, around 10 o'clock, Yi Qian, who had lost a lot of weight from hunger, heard the sound of countless cars and motors. The quiet mountain stronghold suddenly became lively. There were torches illuminating the dark night. Even from where she was, she could vaguely see the light of the torches. Push the book. Gay friends, good book. Yu Ban Xing pampered the book, Baby Meng, as betrothal gifts. Sweet wife, addicted to pampering, angrily threw 2 marriage certificates at her and forced her into a corner. He taunted, not satisfied? Serve me in bed. Not satisfied? Continue to serve me. Just search for the name of the pen or book. Chapter 4690. The village that was illuminated by the fire was no longer as peaceful as it used to be. However, there was no sound of people talking. As the car engine turned off, the village returned to its former tranquility. Even the fire was extinguished. If it wasn't for the faint light from the fire, Yi Qian would have thought that she was hallucinating due to hunger. Yi Qian took a deep breath. Even though she was so hungry that her stomach was sticking to her back, Yi Qian's skills were not affected at all. She ran up and kicked her legs against the wall. Then, she jumped up. Her slender body was as agile as a bird flying through the leaves. She stretched out her arms and grabbed the bars of the only window tightly. Using a pull-up position, she used her arms to exert force and finally saw the outside through the window. She was locked up in a utility room. The front of the room was extremely spacious. The surrounding trees were all cut down, creating an open-air square. The car that disturbed the tranquility of the mountain was parked in the square. There were people guarding the front and back of the car. Someone got out of the car. Even though the night was hazy, Yi Qian could still see who it was with the help of the light from the torch. The first man to get out of the car was none other than Maji, who had coaxed her into the car and could speak fluent Chinese. He got out of the car first and immediately opened the back door. A middle-aged man in a suit with polished black leather shoes came out calmly while buttoning his suit jacket. A fake monk wearing a khaki kasaya received the man. The two of them shook hands politely, and the fake monk made a pleased gesture. A middle-aged man wearing a suit and leather shoes With the temperament of a businessman, Ling Chung naturally walked at the front. He was used to walking in front and would never stop to wait for others. He was a successful man who could be categorized as a strong man. The man in the suit and the fake monk walked in front together, talking as they walked. From Yi Qian's position, she could faintly see the two of them talking happily under the light of the fire. Ma Ji, who was following the man in the suit, waved his hand behind him. Several men in black suits who were guarding the car immediately followed, fulfilling their duties as bodyguards. Yi Qian's gaze fell on one of the bodyguards. In the undercover photo provided by Captain Deng, this bodyguard was one of them. On the 14th day of entering the Golden Triangle, she finally saw an anti-drug police officer. Finally, a young man in traditional Burmese clothes followed closely. Yi Qian also knew him. He was the first man she met when she entered the Burmese mountain village and lusted after her. A group of dozens of people entered the village. Then, the torches went out again. In less than 10 minutes, the entire village was quiet again. Yi Qian jumped back to the ground and rubbed her hungry stomach with one hand. She had to endure it. She should be able to get a small bowl of water and a pancake on the 9th day. As for the people outside, Captain Deng clearly told her that her mission this time was not to keep an eye on the drug dealers entering and leaving the core area of the Golden Triangle, but to thoroughly investigate where the missing girl went and which villages in the Golden Triangle the new drug chain came from. Although the Golden Triangle was a world-famous drug supply area, there was not only one person who controlled the entire Golden Triangle drug chain. The Golden Triangle of today was formed by local ethnic militants, local warlords, local drug lords, and some villages that produced and supplied their own products. Yi Qian, who sneaked in, could not immediately find out who abducted the young girls and where they went. However, since she found that the skeleton was one of the missing girls, and she was sent to the village to be controlled by a group of fake monks, she faintly felt that the missing girls were likely to be under the unified management and control of several forces after discussion. Chapter 4691. If that was the case, then the Chinese anti-narcotics police would be the enemy of the entire Golden Triangle. Once they found out, not only would the missing girls be in danger, but the Border Patrol Police and anti-narcotics police would also be in great danger. Yi Qian did not pay any more attention to the anti-narcotics police. Since Captain Deng had warned her not to interfere in other things, she would remember not to act on her own. Yi Qian, who hadn't had a full meal for 14 consecutive days and was ignored, curled up in the corner of the wall and continued to sleep in a daze. Yi Qian, who was on the enemy's side, did not sleep well. Apart from waking up from hunger, she was also woken up by the noise outside. The car parked outside started again at about 3 o'clock in the morning. Yi Qian, who woke up again, heard footsteps hurriedly approaching. Not long after, the sound of chains twitching could be heard. Someone opened the door and ordered 2 men in black to come in. Without saying a word, they carried Yi Qian out of the room on both sides. "What are you doing? What are you doing? Let me go, I beg you, let me go home. I beg you, I want to go home. I want to go home." Yi Qian kept begging. Her hoarse and unpleasant voice was so weak that the men in black could not hear what she said clearly. After being hungry for so long, even a person made of iron could not bear it. Yi Qian knew that she had lost weight due to hunger, but she did not know that she was so hungry that she was out of shape. Emoji looked at Yi Qian for a long time and only recognized her from the clothes she had not changed out of. "Why is she still here?" Emoji was very surprised and asked a fake monk accompanying them. The fake monk wearing a khaki cassock was not anyone else. Yi Qian recognized this person from the corner of his eyes. The driver also wore a khaki cassock after returning to the village. "We'll wait for you before leaving," the driver answered simply. Emoji looked at the Chinese girl, who was so thin that he almost could not recognize her. He laughed and said, "In your hands, even the most beautiful girl will become the ugliest person, as long as she won't die." The chauffeur smiled coldly, and the ominous glint in his eyes made Emoji shudder inwardly. He had always thought that the driver was just an ordinary driver, but it turned out that he wasn't. Instead, he gave the police of Shan State a headache. Who knew how many Chinese anti-narcotics police and border defense police had died in his hands? With him guarding the stronghold, no one would dare to cause trouble. If they wanted to cause trouble, they would have to consider whether their heads would be blown off by him. Yi Qian was once again dragged into the car. In order to save her energy, Yi Qian, who was in the car, began to feel weak. She cried weakly. She wanted to drink water. She wanted to eat. She was very, very hungry. An apple and a few biscuits were all that Yi Qian had for the past few days. Yi Qian, who had stayed in the village for almost 9 days, was then dragged on a bumpy journey into the depths of the mountains. It took them another 2 days to travel from Shan State to Kachin State in the south of Myanmar. They were getting further and further away from Sherry City. At this point, Yi Qian was no longer locked up alone. Instead, she was locked up with 4 other girls. Yi Qian looked at the 4 girls who were in a daze. She, who was about to collapse, suddenly narrowed her eyes. There were no signs of abuse or beatings on these girls. Their lips were dry and cracked, and they sat with their hands covering their abdomens. They were like her. They had all been starved to the point of collapse. Unfortunately, the 4 girls were all Burmese. Yi Qian could not communicate with them at all. However, this gave Yi Qian a good opportunity to learn the Burmese language. Chapter 4692. When the 4 girls saw Yi Qian walk in, their black eyes only moved slightly. When they saw Yi Qian, they did not react at all. Even their expressions were very numb. They had been starving for too long. They were so hungry that they did not even have the strength to lift their eyes to look at people. They even thought that it would be better to be free sooner rather than starve day after day. The rusty metal door closed with a creaking sound. Yi Qian, who had been thrown in like a rag, waited until he could no longer hear the footsteps outside before he slowly got up and moved to the 4 girls' side. Her arrival made the girls, who were as still as wooden pillars, move slightly. They looked at Yi Qian, and their gazes fell on the bundle that Yi Qian was holding tightly in his arms. Yi Qian was still thinking about how to communicate with her when suddenly, a girl who looked thin and small, but was very agile and not at all sluggish from before, leaped past the 2 girls in front of her and pounced straight at Yi Qian. Although she was very fast, Yi Qian immediately hugged the bundle tightly when he realized what she was trying to do. He did not let the thin girl take the bundle away from him. There was nothing in the bundle other than clothes. The temperature in the mountains was very low at night. She did not fall sick because she had starved all the way here. She only relied on the thick clothes in the bundle to keep herself warm. The clothes could not be taken away. "Let go, let go, let go," the thin girl who was trying to snatch the bundle said in a low voice. She was determined to live. "Let go. Do you hear me? I want to eat, I want to eat. Let go of me now." She stared at Yi Qian. Her sluggish eyes, which are like a pool of stagnant water, were no longer filled with despair. Instead, all hope was ignited. There seemed to be a fire burning in her eyes. Yi Qian could clearly see her desire to live. Yi Qian did not understand what she was saying at all. He only knew that she was trying to snatch his bundle away. The more she tried to snatch it away, the more Yi Qian did not want to give it away. He hugged it tightly and shouted in Chinese, "What are you doing? Let go. This is mine, this is mine." One snatched while the other defended. In the end, both of them fell to the ground. Not only did they have to use their hands, they also used their legs. The skinny girl was no match for Yi Qian, so she had no choice but to call for help. In Burmese, she screamed at the 3 girls who were just watching and not moving. "Why aren't you moving? She must have food on her. Aren't you hungry? Don't you want to eat? Don't you want to live?" One of the girls' expression changed. The skinny girl's words had piqued her interest. She was also very hungry. She also wanted to eat. She also wanted to live. The other girl, who was slightly older, pulled her back and shook her head gently. The 2 of them looked very similar, so it was very likely that they were sisters. There was also a girl who closed her eyes. She was so scared that she was trembling. On the other hand, Yi Qian only knew that the other party's voice suddenly became shrill. That was a scream that used all the strength in her body. Her excitement reached its peak and then suddenly dropped. Then, she no longer had the strength to snatch the bundle away from Yi Qian's arms. Her hands finally let go. When she realized that she no longer had the strength to snatch the bundle away, her eyes widened. Her facial features became ferocious, and she pounced on Yi Qian like a madwoman. Food, food, I want to eat, I want to eat, she kept repeating herself. She was too hungry. She was so hungry that she could even drink a mouthful of water. Yi Qian was confused and could vaguely guess what she was trying to do. Yi Qian, who was retreating, looked a little flustered. He opened the bundle, took out a few pieces of clothing, and shook them vigorously. He used his actions to tell the other party that there was really nothing in the bundle. There was really nothing. Chapter 4693. The girl who was trying to snatch the bag kept staring at Yi Qian. Her eyes did not move at all. When Yi Qian threw away all the clothes in the bag, the flame in the girl's eyes died down bit by bit. Her last hope was gone, huh? Her hope was shattered again. The thin girl screamed, even more desperately. Then she threw herself on the ground and cried loudly. Seeing this, the oldest girl among the four moved her body with difficulty. She even lost the strength to stand up. She crawled to the crying girl and comforted her in Burmese in a low voice. Yi Qian had met 4 Burmese girls in such an environment. Like her, they had been abducted and sold, sent to the depths of the Golden Triangle, and starved all the time. Yi Qian knew that the 4 girls had been detained on the same day. The 2 sisters had been sent in the morning. The thin girl and the other girl, who looked quite timid, had been together. As for how long they had been detained, they all shook their heads, indicating that they did not know how long they had been detained. It seemed that time had stopped in the depths of the mountains. No one knew how much time had passed in the mountains. Suwen had been waiting for Yi Qian's call. She had sent countless messages to Yi Qian and called her back countless times. Since the beginning of the year, she had not received any reply from Yi Qian until the beginning of the semester. Seeing this, Song Jiqiu hugged her girlfriend's shoulder gently and said in a low voice, "You should know that Yi Qian is different from us. She might have gone somewhere to deal with something. When she is done, she will naturally come back to school." Different from us? What's the difference? Suwen frowned slowly. There was an inquisitive look in her eyes. Do you know something? Like you, I don't know anything. But you should think about the difference between Yi Qian and us. You can't contact her. I think it's not that she doesn't want to contact you, but that it's inconvenient for her to do so. So, no matter how many times you call her or send her messages, she can't reply to you. What's the difference between her and me? Suwen was lost in thought. Song Jiqiu sighed silently and frowned secretly. There had been no news from Yi Qian for so long. Was the task she was carrying out difficult? What was her mission? There were only 2 days left before school reopened. Suwen no longer checked her phone every time she returned to the dormitory to see if she had received any replies. She vaguely understood why her boyfriend said that Yi Qian was different. After the New Year and the Lantern Festival, the students returned to school one after another. The day before school started, all the students who had to report back to school had arrived. Yi Qian, however, had not returned. Suwen's phone had to be turned in again because school was about to start. Without any news from Yi Qian, she felt uneasy and waited with Yi Jing. On the 3rd day of school, the 2 of them went to look for the teacher together. The teacher also did not know where Yi Qian had gone. He only knew that Yi Qian had other plans and that his return time was uncertain. Don't worry. I thought you guys were used to Yi Qian disappearing from time to time. She's fine. It's just that she's busy right now and can't return to school on time. Yi Jing frowned slightly and asked, "Is she in danger?" "Danger?" The teacher was stunned. He laughed and said, "What danger can there be in the army? Don't worry, especially Suwen. You're in your senior year. You can't relax your control just because Yi Qian is not by your side. The closer you are to the end, the more you have to persevere. When Yi Qian comes back, I'll ask her to test you and see if you've regressed. She's going to the army." Hearing this, Suwen felt that the stone in her heart had been removed instantly. She smiled at the teacher and said, "Then I won't disturb you. Have a rest. Goodbye, teacher." Chapter 4694. After that, Suwen did not ask where Yi Qian had gone, and neither did Yi Jing. However, when the 2 returned to the dorm, They would first look at the empty bed. Every night before going to bed, they would spread out the army green quilt and fold it into tofu pieces the next morning. Everything was carried out according to the rules of the three of them being together. Yichien, who Suwin kept a close eye on, was still worrying about 3 meals a day. No one paid any attention to them. Every 2 days, they would starve, and on the 3rd day, a bowl of water and a pancake would be delivered punctually. No matter how the 5 of them begged the person who delivered the food, his lips seemed to be glued shut. No matter what the girls said, he would not answer. His silence made the girls feel more and more hopeless, and their negative emotions grew stronger and stronger. The skinny girl who snatched Yi Qian's bag began to show signs of self-harm. In the middle of the night, she kept banging her head against the wall. The other girls were so hungry that they forced themselves to sleep that they did not notice. Yi Qian, who had always been vigilant, opened her eyes and listened carefully to where the banging sound was coming from. Only then did she notice that something was wrong. She knew who was banging her head against the wall, but she did not act rashly. Instead, she chose to listen quietly. She could not act rashly. Before she found the missing girls and figured out the new drug delivery chain, she could not interfere with anything. Even if a life was about to be destroyed in front of her, she only had one choice: to watch calmly from the sidelines. Today, Yi Qian and the 4 girls had been locked up together for 8 days. Tomorrow, it was time to deliver water and pancakes. A bowl of water and a pancake were Yi Qian's only hope of not starving to death. The banging sound did not last long. Yi Qian slowly closed her eyes when she heard no more noise. She had a bad premonition. The next day, Yi Qian saw that the skinny girl who snatched her bag to see if there was food had a bruise on her forehead. It was a shocking sight. When the other 3 girls saw this, they crawled to the skinny girl's side and asked her softly with concern. The skinny little girl didn't say anything. Her head was lowered, and no one knew what she was thinking. Seeing this, the 2 sisters no longer surrounded them and retreated to the corner, leaving only the other girl to accompany them. After about a few minutes, the skinny little girl took the initiative to talk to the other girl. His voice was very, very soft. He was so weak that he had to pause several times in the middle of a sentence. Yi Qian didn't pay much attention to it, but the other party's gaze intentionally or unintentionally glanced in her direction a few times. This made Yi Qian feel both puzzled and wary. The 2 of them seemed to be discussing something. Today, it was time to deliver water and pancakes. The iron gate opened on time again. The Burmese man who delivered water and pancakes to them every time appeared on time and took out the water and pancakes from the bamboo basket. There were 5 servings in total. After putting them down, he left immediately. Every time he left, the 5 girls would only dare to crawl over and grab their share after he left. Yi Qian also took her share. Just as she was about to turn around, her back suddenly tensed up. She felt someone staring at her from behind, waiting for her to turn around. Yi Qian, who was so thin that she didn't have much flesh on her body, narrowed her eyes slightly. She didn't immediately turn around. Instead, she chose to eat the pancakes with her back to them. The 2 girls who were staring at Yi Qian exchanged glances. They put their pancakes into their pockets and rushed forward at the same time. The 2 girls began to fight for the food. Their first target was Yi Qian. They had a plan and were waiting for this moment to come. The 2 sisters weren't part of their plan. First, there were 2 of them. Second, they were both Burmese. They didn't want to attack them, but it didn't mean that the platoon wouldn't attack them next. Chapter 4695. The younger sister was frightened. She sat on the ground and kicked her legs, not forgetting to grab 2 palm-sized pancakes. She stuffed them into her mouth as she retreated. She was afraid that her pancake would be snatched away. The older sister immediately protected the younger sister and retreated. She didn't dare to join the fight, nor did she have the thought of snatching someone else's pancake. Yi Qian, who was here on a mission, wouldn't give anyone a chance to snatch the pancake away. She also wouldn't sympathize and give up the brand in her hand. The 2 girls rushed over, but Yi Qian nimbly avoided them. Seeing this, the 2 sisters couldn't help but lean back. At the same time, they held the brand in their hands tightly. They looked at the 2 girls who collided with each other in shock. Yi Qian's avoidance caused the girls to collide with each other. Their foreheads hit each other, and the sound of bones colliding could be heard. This collision was a little fierce. The two girls fell to the ground. They saw stars and blackouts. At the same time, one of the girl's pancakes fell out of her pocket and fell beside the skinny girl's leg. The girl who didn't have a pancake didn't notice it. The skinny girl's eyes lit up. She picked up the pancake and crawled to a corner, ignoring the blackout in front of her eyes. She wolfed down the pancake in a short while. The girl who didn't have a pancake realized that her pancake was gone. She didn't expect the skinny girl to snatch her pancake and was still looking for it. No one reminded her. The two sisters didn't remind her. They only kept reminding her with their eyes. They also looked at the skinny girl who was eating the second pancake. The girl who didn't even take care of her pancake was only looking around and didn't notice. The two sisters didn't want to cause trouble, so they chose to keep quiet. Yi Qian, on the other hand, was eating the pancake and drinking water. The other party wanted to snatch her pancake, and it was a premeditated robbery. Why should she sympathize with a criminal who committed murder? No wonder the two of them were talking in the morning. She hadn't guessed wrong. They were discussing something. They were discussing how to snatch her pancake. The pancake was cold and hard, but Yi Qian ate it all. Even when the girl fell to the ground without the pancake, Yi Qian did not show any sympathy. In the end, the two sisters each left a small half of the pancake for the girl who couldn't find the pancake and was so hungry that her eyes rolled back, and she looked like she was going to die at any moment. After receiving 2 pancakes, the skinny little girl finally felt full. At the same time, Yi Qian saw that her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she was plotting something. Seeing this, Yi Qian's mind flashed with a very vague feeling. It surged up quickly and then disappeared in the blink of an eye. She seemed to have grasped something, but before she could think deeply about it, it suddenly disappeared. The skinny girl licked her lips and crawled towards Yi Qian. Yi Qian stared at her and slowly retreated. The strange feeling that flashed through his mind appeared again. This time, Yi Qian grasped it tightly. In that instant, his heart was in turmoil, and his expression changed. The trouble that happened today was probably the beginning of the worst. It was quickly verified. The next time, there would only be 4 pancakes. This meant that there was definitely one more pancake that hadn't eaten yet. The girl who lost the pancake didn't wait for the person who scared her to leave. She immediately pounced and tried to take 2 pancakes. The skinny little girl, who was already strong and wanted 2 pancakes, didn't want to be left behind. She fiercely bumped into the first girl who pounced to snatch the pancake and said something in Burmese. With a fierce expression, she was the first to snatch 2 pancakes. Chapter 4696. She took 2 portions, and the remaining 2 portions had to be split among the 4 of them. This time, even the 2 sisters did not agree. The situation instantly went out of control. The 4 Burmese girls fought over the food. Yi Qian was the first to get the pancake. At night, the skinny girl who managed to get 2 portions was taken away. She did not return until dawn. Yi Qian stretched her numb legs, and there was a hint of seriousness in her eyes. She had to observe for a while longer. She did not know if it was as she thought. The most ruthless, and the one who fought for their own benefits would end their hunger early. The next time, Yi Qian confirmed her suspicions. The second girl was taken away that night. She also did not return. When it was time to deliver water and biscuits again, Yi Qian started to snatch the water and biscuits. She had already stayed here for 20 days, so she had to start snatching because she needed to leave this place. She needed to hurry up and investigate. This time, the one who was taken away was Yi Qian. Spring had come quietly. The ginkgo trees and willow leaves on campus seemed to have sprouted overnight. They welcomed the warm spring breeze, and the faded colors of the seasons were replaced by the fresh green of spring. A row of dark green figures walked through the trees. Their steps were orderly and powerful. They walked forward with fearless determination. The 4th-year students were beginning their final year of study. The compulsory and elective courses were the focus of the 4th-year students. As for the physical training, it was still the same. They continued to train as usual. The students of the command faculty heard the most from the instructors in charge of their training. Every time they saw that the results were not ideal, they would say, "Without Yi Qian, I'm not even interested in training you. Look at your results. Look at your results. Is this reasonable? Is this reasonable? If Yi Qian comes back, he'll crush you in minutes." I say, "Did you guys not eat? Are you still asleep? Yi Qian isn't here. Don't you have anyone to compare with? Do you think you're so great? Look at all of you. You're saying that the training is too heavy. Did Yi Qian say that it's too heavy? She thinks it's not enough. Such an outstanding person is still working hard. What about you guys? Do you think you're as outstanding as Yi Qian?" Although Yi Qian did not come to school, his presence was stronger than when he was here. During every training session, the students were extremely nervous. They were afraid that the instructors would compare them to Yi Qian. Yi Qian was a legendary existence. Most people were mediocre and incompetent. How could it be so easy to become a legend? Since he could not become a legend, he naturally could not be compared to the legendary Yi Qian. There was no harm in bringing it up for comparison, but once there was a comparison, the damage was huge. Yi Jing took advantage of her height and patted Su Wen's head. She smiled and said, "That's good. I'll let you know that even without Jane Eyre, you can't slack off. The instructors are right. Our Jane Eyre is so amazing. Who dares to say no? Do you see how many people will stand up for her? Train obediently. Don't think you can be arrogant just because you found a boyfriend. People who take the postgraduate entrance exam have no right to waste time. Understand?" Su Wen, who chose to take the postgraduate entrance exam, immersed herself in the sea of learning. She finally felt that she did not have enough time to spend. She finally understood why Yi Qian always said that there was not enough time. Chapter 4697. Without Yi Jian by her side, Su Wen did not relax herself. Occasionally, she also wanted to relax and slack off. However, her boyfriend, Song Jiqiu, appeared out of nowhere and supervised her in a domineering yet gentle manner. Su Wen was a typical person who could be persuaded by reason, but not cowed by force. As for Song Jiqiu, she was smart. Although it was always Song Jiqiu who made concessions, in fact, it was Su Wen who was led by Song Jiqiu. She was so willing that she even thought she had won over her boyfriend. Every time He Jing saw that Su Wen was won over by Song Jiqiu with a few words, and that Song Jiqiu even betrayed her, He Jing would secretly give Song Jiqiu a thumbs up. Su Wen was lazy. Although Yi Qian corrected many of her small problems and even corrected a lot of the laziness in her bones, she did not have good self-control. Usually, she would show her true colors after a short while. At this time, she needed someone to supervise and remind her. Since Yi Qian was not here, Song Jiqiu took over. She enjoyed it and liked it very much. In private, Su Wen obviously threw a tantrum several times, but Song Jiqiu was not angry. Instead, she smiled at Yi Jing and said, "You are very cute. The more I look at you, the cuter you are. The more I look at you, the more I like you." Yi Jing, who was speechless, almost vomited because of his mushy words. She did not expect Song Jiqiu's understanding of cute to be so weird. There was always an insurmountable chasm between men and women. Su Wen was very good at acting like a spoiled child. She knew when to stop. Sometimes she was barbaric, sometimes she was charming, and sometimes she was a little emotional. To some extent, she had Song Jiqiu under control. He Jing thought they were a match made in heaven. One was willing to be hit, while the other was willing to be hit. She appreciated the relationship between Yi Qian and her boyfriend, whose surname was Xia. It was a normal relationship. It was not as mushy as Su Wen and Song Jiqiu, which made people want to avoid them. The 4th year seemed to pass very quickly. Only then did she feel that the willow leaves were beginning to sprout. When she looked up again, she saw that the peach blossoms had already withered, and small green fruits were hanging on the branches. In the blink of an eye, spring was coming to an end and was about to pass. Yi Qian, who was the target of many students and teachers, entered the western part of Lang Bang province in Laos. Lang Bang province was also part of the Golden Triangle. Jean Sanja's territory included Shan State and Kabang of Burma, Thailand's Ching Prefecture, and my prefecture to the north, Laos Luang Ta Province, Shaley Prefecture, Usiai Prefecture, and the western part of Langpang Province. There were more than 3,000 villages and towns of various sizes. 2 days ago, Yichien was still in Kabang in northern Burma. 2 days later, she was in the western part of Lang Bang Province in Laos. She was going to complete the first drug trade in her life here. It was already May. It had been 4 months since Yi Chien entered Burma before the Spring Festival. After starving for a whole month, Yi Chien chose to be obedient and survive. She became a slave who could be abandoned by the drug kings at any time and be pushed out to take bullets at any time. She had no human rights at all. That night, Yi Chien was taken out and sent to a very beautiful woman who wore traditional Burmese women's clothes. The woman did not say anything. She just stretched out her hand, which had long and sharp nails and was painted with red nail polish, to lift Yi Chien's chin. After she looked at Yi Chien carefully, she left a deep nail mark on Yi Chien's chin with a few drops of blood. After she finished looking, she waved her hand. The 2 men who had carried Yi Chien here carried Yi Chien again and walked into the dark depths of the forest without any light. At that moment, Yi Chien was ready to run away. Chapter 4698. In the end, she did not want to threaten her life. Instead, she wanted her to stand in front of the vertical hole that could only fit 1 person at a time. The hole emitted a nauseating stench. The woman, who was as beautiful as a snake, gently stroked the back of Yi Jian's neck and smiled coldly. "Do you want to survive?" She spoke in Chinese. Of course, Yi Chien wanted to live. She nodded obediently, but there was a look of horror on her face that made the woman giggle. In the middle of the night, in the dark forest that was as dark as the entrance to hell, the woman's laughter was delicate, but there was a darkness that made people feel afraid. You have to be good. I like obedient children the most. As for disobedient children, a second ago, she was still smiling, but in the next second, she suddenly pressed down on Yi Chien's neck and forced Yi Chien to nod. She then looked into the bottomless hole that was shrouded in a foul stench. The flashlight shone nearby, illuminating the seemingly bottomless hole. The nauseated Yi Chien saw clearly what was at the bottom of the hole, and her pupils constricted instantly. Wretch! The acid in her stomach and the bitter water in her bowel rushed out of her throat, and Yi Chien vomited. It wasn't because he was afraid that he vomited. Instead, it was because the pile of white bones beneath him had severely damaged his vision and soul. All of his reactions were focused on his stomach, and he couldn't control his body's reaction at all. He vomited directly. The dark hole was filled with bones, and there were even undecayed limbs. Little Yi, this world is darker than we imagined. You have to remember, darkness is not scary. What's scary is the representation of justice, but ignoring the darkness and allowing it to grow. That's what's scary. This world was darker and scarier than she imagined. Even though she had walked through a blood-soaked battlefield, what she saw in front of her sent chills down her spine. How many people were buried below? How many people had died in their hands? How dark could a person's heart be? How bad could it be? Would there be an end to the bad? Yi Chien vomited until her stomach hurt and tears welled up in her eyes. Would there be an end to the bad? She was afraid there was no end. The woman's chilling laughter echoed in Yi Chien's ears. For several nights in a row, Yi Chien would wake up from nightmares. For several nights in a row, he could still hear the woman's laughter. It was cold, sinister, and inhuman. Why did the Chinese anti-narcotics police vow to fight to the death with the Golden Triangle drug dealers? Why did they continue to move forward and continue to fight to sweep away the darkness, even though they knew that the road ahead was full of dangers and that one day they might fall behind and sleep here forever? The piles of bones were the best answer, because there was justice in the heart. That night, Yi Chien found out that this woman was the trainer who trained all the abducted girls. In the following days, she was trained by this vicious woman. The days of training were torturous. Of the girls who were locked up, only 3 made it through, and 2 disappeared without a trace. The first to disappear was the girl who had lost her cooked rice. After that, the younger sister of the sisters disappeared. She was still around that night, but they were never seen again the next morning. Her elder sister had cried and asked, but she was beaten up in return. She was told that if she wanted to see her younger sister, she had to be obedient. Where did the two of them go? No one knew. Of the remaining three, the first to leave alive from the vicious woman was the skinny girl, then her elder sister, and finally Yi Qian. Yi Qian, who survived, had the opportunity to come to Laos today. Chapter 4699. Before entering Laos, Yi Qian thought that it would take some time, but unexpectedly, everything went smoothly. Even though she had drugs on her, she entered Laos without a hitch. When she encountered the local police, Yi Qian, who was coming out for the first time, broke out in a cold sweat. In the end, it was a false alarm. They didn't even check on her. The drug dealer who was in charge of the exchange gave one of the Laos police a roll of US dollar bills and even casually searched their luggage before letting them go. If this were China, no drug dealer would dare to be so impudent. China was one of the most strict countries in the world in terms of drug prohibition, and its harshness often drew criticism from Western countries. No other country was as strict as China in terms of drug prohibition. No matter how much drugs were used, once they were caught, they would be held criminally responsible. More than 100 years ago, because of opium, China became a country riddled with holes. In the end, the mountains and rivers collapsed. Countless people died in the war, and countless people were destroyed by drugs. With history as a mirror, one could see the rise and fall of China, and that was how China became so strict in its drug prohibition. Yi Qian, who saw with his own eyes that he could buy and sell with just money, shuddered in the depths of his heart. After successfully entering Laos, Yi Qian changed into Laos' traditional clothes. He hadn't cut his hair since the winter break, and his long black hair was combed into a high bun. He changed into a brightly colored tube skirt and a matching shawl. He wore gold and silver bracelets on both of his hands, and followed closely behind the venomous woman named Lena. After entering Laos, he immediately got into the car that had been sent to pick him up. It was a black Benz, and the interior was extremely luxurious. One bodyguard immediately opened the car door, while another stood on the side vigilantly. The venomous woman, Lena, got into the car first, followed by Yi Qian. The car drove into the border county and finally stopped in front of the most luxurious and ethnic hotel in the county. A doorman immediately came over to open the car door and politely asked Lena to get out first, followed by Yi Qian. As for the bodyguard, he got out of the car himself, and there was no need for the doorman to serve him. The sun at the end of May was just right, and it shone brightly on the azure blue sky. Yi Qian couldn't help but squint when he got out of the car, as if he had forgotten to follow Lena's footsteps. Lena, who was walking in front of him, swaying her hips like a snake, realized that the person behind her wasn't following her. She stood still and elegantly turned around. Although there was a smile on her lips, her eyes were cold, and she waved at Yi Qian. "Little cutie, hurry up and follow me." Lena's face, as if he had never seen the world, caused Lena, who had never seen such a scene. Lena couldn't help but frown. She raised her hand, slowly touched Yi's face, Aunt's face, she's. Lena, like a poisonous needle needles, a poison needle like a needle. Poison Lena. She, be. The weather at the end of May was already very hot. Lena's hands were just like her. No matter how hot the weather was, they were cold like a snake, sinister and cold. She chuckled softly and said, "You need to slow down and relax your expression. I need a beautiful and obedient girl. I don't need a girl who is as stiff as a rock and completely uninteresting. It's so good to be young. Her face is so soft, and it feels like playing a piano. Every touch is so addictive. Such a good face, such a tender body, and so beautiful. Let's not talk about whether men would like her. Even a woman like her would like her." She liked her so much that she couldn't help but want to destroy her. She had to endure. Chapter 4700. It wasn't easy to train a new product. It would be a waste to destroy it so quickly, especially with such a beautiful face. TSK, if only it was hers. Unfortunately, it wasn't hers, so it was better to destroy it. Be good, little cutie. When you take out the good stuff later, remember to introduce it seriously. If the customer is satisfied, there will be a reward. If not, her sharp nails scratched Yi Qian's chin, and a sharp pain suddenly came. Yi Qian instantly felt a burning pain on his chin. Be good, do you understand? Yi Qian, who was in so much pain that tears welled up his eyes, nodded frantically and replied in Burmese, I will be good. I will definitely satisfy Sister Lena. Wrong. Lena's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. You don't have to satisfy me. You have to satisfy the customer, understand? Sister Lena will only be satisfied if the customer is satisfied. Yes, I understand. I will definitely satisfy the customer. Sister Lena, don't worry, I will be good. Yi Qian's eyes were filled with tears, and his face was filled with deep fear. Lena was satisfied that he didn't dare to resist, and she let go of her hand. She didn't forget to pat Yi Qian's face lightly. That's more like it. Sister Lena likes obedient little cuties. When Lena turned around, she didn't see Yi Qian, who was afraid a second ago. The moment she turned around, her dark eyes flashed with coldness. The girls who were abducted and sold to Burmese were all under her control, and then brought out to hide drugs and sell them. From hiding drugs in their bodies, to hiding drugs with their looks, and then to recommending drugs with their looks. If the customer had any requests, the girls who hid the drugs had to satisfy them unconditionally. If there was any resistance, they would be beaten or killed. Her methods were so cruel that it made one's hair stand on end. A new, even more inhumane drug chain was born. No one thought that it was against humanity and only recognized the benefits it brought. And Yi Qian was one of the people who could bring benefits to Lena's group. In order to prevent Yi Qian from escaping, she had 2 bodyguards following behind her. The bodyguards didn't hide any drugs. Only Yi Qian did. A total of 50 grams of high-purity ice seed, mainly supplied to Europe, America, North America, and other countries. Lena entered the 4th floor and pushed open the Japanese-style sliding door. Lena, who had a cold expression a moment ago, bent over and entered the door with a smile blooming on her face. She clasped her hands together and waited in the room, greeting the buyers from the Western countries. She could speak fluent English with an authentic American accent. She sounded more like an American than a Burmese. The interior of the house was also decorated in the Japanese style. There was a raised floor, and the entire floor was covered with a plain carpet. There were tatami mats, a tea room, a chess room, and a sparring room. The most conspicuous thing was 2 cross katanas, which could be seen upon entering. Including Lena, there were 6 people in the spacious room. The 2 buyers from North America were introduced to Lena, and they quickly chatted. Yi Qian did not go in immediately. Instead, he waited outside for Lena's instructions before going in. After about 3 minutes, the tightly shut sliding door opened again. Lena walked out and held Yi Qian's hand as they went in together. One of the 2 bodyguards went in, while the other stayed outside to keep watch. The high-purity ice seed was removed from Yi Qian's calf. Lena personally bent over to retrieve it and then handed it to Yi Qian. In turn, Yi Qian handed it to the North American customer sitting across from him. The newest purity. The quantity is very small. I hope you will be satisfied. Yi Qian introduced in Burmese. The 2 buyers from North America did not immediately take the goods. Instead, they smiled and asked the person who introduced them, "Is this the special deal you were talking about?" Chapter 4701. The North American buyer's question made Yi Qian's palms sweat slightly. Even her eyes darkened a little. After being undercover for 4 months, she knew a lot of things that the narcotics police couldn't find out. For example, girls not only went missing in China, but also in China, Burma, and Laos. There were even single girls who went missing from these 3 countries. She also knew that Lena was the creator of this new poison chain. She came up with the idea after contacting an underground network in the UK and quickly got the approval of the boss behind the scenes. From a year ago until today, This new poison chain had spread to the west. Those missing girls. Yi Qian knew that they couldn't be found. Even if they were found, they wouldn't be the same as before. The longer she was undercover, the more she knew. A month ago, she found out that all the girls who had been taken by Lena were taken out like her. They were completely useless. The girls who were taken out would be forced to complete the drug trade. They would become playthings or even test subjects for the new poison. Yi Qian only needed to investigate who controlled these missing girls, where they went, how the whole new poison chain was operated, and where the other party's base was. She only needed to investigate this clearly, and then she could leave. However, although she had investigated clearly, she couldn't immediately spread the news. Therefore, Yi Qian needed a chance to go out. She used the chance that originally belonged to the skinny girl to make Lena choose her. That was why she had the chance to go out. Next, she needed to find a way to get the news back to China. Yi Qian slowly opened the new poison paper and calmed herself down. She continued to pretend that she didn't understand English and didn't know what the other party was saying. The snake woman Lena immediately heard that the other party wasn't interested in the human goods she brought out. She smiled charmingly and calmly said, "I don't know what Mr. Lowell likes. If possible, I really hope Mr. Lowell can tell me personally." "Haha, no. Even if I tell you, you won't be satisfied with me. Because you're not the biggest boss of your group. What I like, I only want to tell your boss personally. Isn't that right, my old friend?" Laura, the drug dealer from North America, turned her head and looked at her old friend. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. They had no intention of negotiating with Lena. Lena was not the biggest drug dealer. The person behind her was the real drug lord behind the scenes. However, her position in the stronghold was also quite high. Whenever she appeared, it was to receive big clients. The transactions between them were as high as tens of millions of dollars. In the face of the North American buyer's doubts, Lena smiled like a blossoming branch of a flower. Her eyes were full of charm as she replied, "Mr. Laura, Mr. Spar, today we are just getting to know each other. Business matters can be discussed after we get to know each other better. We're just chatting now. It's not a special deal. It's just that the company of a beautiful and cute girl will make our transaction easier and more pleasant. I wonder if Mr. Raoul is satisfied, or does Mr. Raoul need a better specialty service?" Raoul, one of the North American drug dealers, used to only cooperate with two local drug factories in Melbourne and the Silver Triangle. Recently, Melbourne's drug shipments had been completely taken over by several major drug dealers in North America. The monopoly of the market made Raoul and Spa, who were inferior drug dealers, lose the lowest cost of goods, so they had to find another way. Chapter 4702. They split into two groups. One group went to the Golden Triangle, where there were more and more drug dealers, and the other group went to the Golden Crescent to look for partners. It was their first time in Laos, and they bypassed the local drug dealers to find Lena. The North American underground market suddenly had a trend of girls testing drugs, and selling sex. Originally, Raoul and the other drug dealers didn't know where these girls came from. In the end, they found the person behind the scenes through the seller who controlled the girls. Raoul and Spar flew to an Asian country. For the sake of caution, they arranged to meet in Laos instead of going directly to Myanmar. Lena's appearance disappointed Raoul and Spar because they knew that the woman in front of them was not the real boss behind the scenes. Lena, a very mature and charming woman. They could smell the same kind of dark aura on her. Although Raoul was very interested in the special service, it was his first time in Laos, so he didn't want to try it out immediately. He raised his eyebrows and glanced at Yi Jian with some interest, but there wasn't much interest in his eyes. Instead, he was interested in the sexy and voluptuous Lena. "I do like better special service, like the special service in the North American underground market. Young and beautiful girls are locked in iron cages, and you can watch them twist their waists crazily. That kind of feeling is really great. I like it very much. I hope that one day there will be a mature and sexy woman who can perform for me. For example, I would be more interested in a lady like you." What he meant was that he wanted Lena to perform for him if there was a chance. There was a hint of contempt in his words. Raoul was a drug dealer. He walked on a knife every day, and he could tell at a glance who was the real boss behind the scenes. Although he could smell the same dark aura on Lena, he was very sure that Lena was definitely not the real boss behind the scenes. She was just a small boss who had a certain status in the whole group. For example, she was better at controlling these young and beautiful girls and making them recommend drugs for the whole group, which would bring benefits to the whole group. The one who could really give and was not her. Raoul's request was met with Lena's charming smile. She leaned towards Raoul in a deep V-neck dress. Yi Qian only saw the drug dealer, Raoul, and the other drug dealer's eyes focused on the pair of breasts on the table. The ditch in the chest was a great weapon. Yi Qian secretly curled his sweaty palms. If he was only interested in Lena, then she was safe for now. She was only temporarily safe. If she stayed here for a long time and was controlled by Lena for a long time, then, one day, she would meet a drug dealer who happened to be interested in her. For the sake of her own arrangements, she did not have much time left. If there's a chance, I'll definitely perform for Mr. Raoul in person. At that time, I hope Mr. Raoul won't mind that I'm not as beautiful and young as her. A cold, snake-like hand gently rested on Yi Qian's shoulder. When he raised his hand, Bai Yuansheng, who was on the left, almost jumped out of her hanging dress. The two drug dealers from North America also laughed together. The atmosphere of the discussion was quite pleasant. Lena saw that their attention had been diverted to Yi Qian twice, but to no avail. She could only give up. He lowered his eyes and drank, hiding the gloominess in his eyes. Chapter 4703. Lena's goal was simple. She wanted to bring out the girls she had brought and use their youth and beauty as bargaining chips. Then, she would recommend them to keep the customers and increase the chances of a successful partnership. However, she had miscalculated this time. She had thought that this group of underground buyers from North America would all like the girls she had sent over. But in the end, there were two mature outliers. Her carefully trained pawns didn't have any effect, and in the end, she had lost herself. It seemed that she would have to find a few more well-endowed married women. Walking out of the hotel, Lena looked Yi Qian up and down with a cold gaze. Her lips curled into a cold smile. Your luck is not bad. Yi Qian lowered her head and stood there obediently. She didn't say anything and didn't look at Lena. She had always given Lena the impression that she was obedient, well-behaved, and knew how to survive, but she was also very timid. Even if she didn't say anything, Lena felt that it was normal. Seeing this, Lena, who felt a little bored, glanced at her coldly. She swayed her hips and walked to the front in her stilettos. Yi Qian bit her lower lip and followed obediently. If she didn't follow, the bodyguards behind her wouldn't be polite. Lena wasn't in a good mood. She was angry even when she got into the car, so the two bodyguards didn't dare to say anything. Yi Qian was about to get into the car when he realized something was different. The driver had changed. It was no longer the driver who had come to the border. Instead, it was a man with a scar on the right side of his face and a bullet wound on the inside of his exposed arm. Yi Qian narrowed her eyes and was about to get into the car obediently. Just as she held the door with both hands, the new driver suddenly spoke in English. The general wants to know if you have reached an agreement with the two North American businessmen. Yi Qian, who was bending over to get into the car, paused. General? Codename or military rank? Suddenly, Yi Qian thought about how the bodyguards bribed them when they passed by the Burmese border. His heart sank uncontrollably. If the driver said that general represented military rank, and now the driver was asking if Lena had a deal, could it be that the boss behind Lena was a general in the Burmese military? At the thought of this, Yi Qian's back was drenched in cold sweat. If that was the case, then the severity of the situation was beyond imagination. No, she had to contact Captain Deng today. There had been no news for 4 months. Would Captain Deng and the others think that she had died? Before Yi Qian could fully sit down, a sharp gust of wind suddenly blew over. Yi Qian, who had taken a solid slap from Lena, didn't dare to resist. He sat down and covered his face. Even though he was in so much pain that tears welled up in his eyes, he didn't dare to say a word. Please tell the general that Lena will succeed in 3 days. Tonight, it's my mistake. I didn't train them properly before bringing them out. I hope that the general can give me another chance." Lena, who had slapped Yi Qian a second ago, was now extremely cautious. She even lowered her posture. It was obvious that she was afraid of the general that the driver had mentioned. Yi Qian, who had been slapped, took the slap for nothing. She knew very well that this slap was for Lena to take the blame for her failure in the deal. Lena needed to give the general an explanation. She didn't want to be punished by the general, so she could only choose one person to take the blame. Yi Qian, who was in the car, was the best choice. Chapter 4704. The driver didn't care who was beaten or who was wronged. He didn't even look at Yi Qian. He didn't want to waste his time on irrelevant people. The general has been at the border recently. You haven't reported to him for a long time. Slap. The driver stopped talking and glanced at Yi Qian coldly. Lena, who felt much better after beating her up, immediately explained, "She doesn't understand English. She only knows how to speak Chinese and Burmese." The driver immediately looked away and continued, "The general will take a day to enter Laos. You can leave some time for him. Get rid of the people around you. Don't let anyone tail you." Lena's words made the driver less vigilant. It was obvious that she held a lot of weight in the company. The driver trusted her. Yi Qian covered her face with her hands. She kept her head down and tried to pretend that she was invisible. She tried her best not to let the people in the car feel her presence. The driver's arrival made Lena tense up. Yi Qian was closely watched by 2 bodyguards. No matter where she went, the 2 bodyguards never left. Even when she was sleeping, they would handcuff Yi Qian's hands and feet. They wouldn't give Yi Qian a single minute to go out alone. They completely cut off Yi Qian's contact with the outside world. In the office of the anti-narcotics team in Yun Province's Cheli City, Captain Deng finished his day's work. He dragged his tired feet past the martyr's wall. He didn't go back to his office immediately. Instead, he habitually walked to the martyr's wall and reported the day's work to his comrades who had sacrificed themselves. "Brothers, we made a big haul today. We turned over 500 grams of drugs. There were pills, drugs, powders, and everything else. These guys are getting more and more cunning. They put the powders into plastic headbands and tie them around their heads like rubber bands. We poured them all out. There were 50 grams. The drug dealers are getting more and more cunning. We can't let our guard down. The drug dealers are getting more and more vicious. We can't back down. We have to fight this war to the end. You guys just watch." Captain Deng wiped the spotless glass wall with both hands. He stood there quietly for a while before returning to his office. He sat down and was about to drink the freshly brewed hot tea when an anti-narcotics officer excitedly knocked on the door and came in. "Captain, good news. There's news from Laos. The female soldier we sent out 4 months ago has appeared in Laos." At the same time, he placed a few blurry photos in front of Captain Deng. "Take a look. These are photos from the surveillance cameras. This girl in traditional Laotian clothing is the one we sent out." Deng Dui, who was resting on his chair, jumped up and grabbed all the photos to examine them carefully. That's right. It was indeed the female soldier they sent out. Even if the whole picture was very blurry, he could still recognize at a glance that it was the female soldier he had sent out. "There's another woman beside her. This is the one." The narcotics officer pointed at another photo. "This is her. She's about 1.7 meters tall. She's a new face and has never appeared before." Captain Deng, who finally had news of the female soldier, heaved a sigh of relief. He immediately pointed to one of the photos and said in a deep voice, "Do a facial analysis and look through old Zhong's file. See if there's anything about her." "Okay, I'll check it right away." The captain nodded. He quickly left the office and went to the technical department. Cheli City's anti-narcotics team had locked onto a new face. It was none other than Lena. Chapter 4705. Lena's appearance gave the anti-narcotics police a new direction in their investigation. They also found a clue that had never surfaced before. It could be said that Lena's whereabouts were exposed entirely because of Yi Qian. If the anti-narcotics police hadn't been paying attention to Yi Qian's whereabouts, and if the anti-narcotics officers of the three countries hadn't occasionally handed over the border surveillance, the anti-narcotics police wouldn't have noticed Lena at all. A new face with no criminal record and a foreigner who had never entered China's borders. Even if the anti-narcotics police had heavenly eyes, they wouldn't have been able to lock onto Lena as a suspect through surveillance. It was precisely because Yi Qian was by her side that Lena, who had never been targeted by the anti-narcotics police, came out into the open. However, Lena's investigation didn't go smoothly. 20 anti-narcotics police were divided into two batches. They worked for 2 days and 2 nights, and according to Lena's approximate age, they didn't find anything. Then they asked the Myanmar anti-narcotics police if there were any female drug dealers in Myanmar. Yes, there were, but they couldn't match her age or appearance. The woman who appeared in Yi Qian seemed to have appeared out of thin air. They couldn't find any information about her. Investigate. Investigate. There's no information about a living person. There's no entry or exit records. Impossible. Investigate. You must find out for me. People are alive. As long as they're alive, they'll leave traces of their lives. If there's no entry or exit records, then what about the cities in Myanmar? Since she's now at the border of Laos, it means that she has records of leaving the country. As long as there are records, we can definitely find out who she is. After 2 days and 2 nights without any results, Captain Deng of the anti-narcotics police was furious. Just as the anti-narcotics police were still investigating, an old man walked into the anti-narcotics police station with 2 traffic police escorting him. He was here to look for Captain Deng. Captain Deng, who was so tense that his subordinates didn't even dare to breathe loudly, was surprised when he saw the white-haired old man. The anger on his face immediately disappeared. When the old man saw Captain Deng, he grabbed Captain Deng's arm with his skinny hands. Captain Deng quickly held the old man. He knew why the old man was here. When the old man saw Captain Deng, tears welled up in his eyes. He said with a trembling voice, "Captain Deng, have you found my granddaughter? Why isn't she back yet? How long will it take for her to come back? Will I ever see my granddaughter again?" The old man's cloudy eyes were washed by tears. At that moment, the old man's eyes, which had been touched by time, were filled with wisdom that Captain Deng didn't dare to look directly at. The old man, who hadn't seen his granddaughter come home for a long time, already had an answer in his heart, but he didn't dare to think too deeply about it. His old bones were still fine and alive. How could something happen to his granddaughter? The old man didn't want to wait, so he walked out of the mountain alone again. He inquired and inquired along the way. Finally, he came to a city he had never been to in his life. He saw that the traffic police were wearing a police cap with the same totem he had seen before. The old man found the police. "Don't worry. We will definitely find your granddaughter. We will definitely let you see your granddaughter. I swear on this police uniform that I will definitely find your granddaughter." After crossing over mountains and valleys, Captain Deng arrived at a city that he had never been to in his entire life. Tears welled up in his eyes. He couldn't imagine what the old man had gone through to reach the city after crossing the mountains that were difficult for people and vehicles to pass through. Chapter 4706. In order to find his granddaughter, the old man put his life on the line. The arrival of the old man alarmed the leadership of Cherry City. The leaders of the anti-narcotics team and the criminal investigation team were summoned to the city for a meeting on the same day and returned to their respective stations with orders from above. Lena's appearance became the key to whether or not they could find the old man's granddaughter. The anti-narcotics team and the criminal investigation team were all involved in the case of Lena's activities. The anti-narcotics police in Cherry City didn't give up and continued to carefully investigate through the various border surveillance cameras. In order to find the whereabouts of this person and make progress in the case, the anti-narcotics police patrolling during the day and returning at night would cooperate with their colleagues in the rear to investigate the surveillance cameras. For days had passed since they found out about Lena's existence, and the anti-narcotics police in Cherry City still hadn't made any progress. Even Captain Deng was so depressed that no one dared to take the initiative to talk to him, unless it was necessary for work. As long as they saw their boss with a dark face, they would immediately lower their heads and avoid him. There was no other way. Their boss would always be in a bad mood once a month. It had become an iron law. Usually, he would be in a bad mood for a day, but this time, it would be a bit longer. It would probably take 3 to 5 days for his mood to turn from bad to good. Just as the anti-narcotics police in Cherry City were increasing their efforts to investigate Lena, a batch of drugs seized in the past month was being destroyed at the border of Laos. It was mainly drug dealers from Myanmar and Laos. The senior military officials of both Laos and Myanmar were present, and they expressed to each other that they vowed to fight the drug dealers to the end and that they would not be merciful to any drug dealers. The TV stations of both countries reported the anti-narcotics operation in real time and highly praised the senior military officials of both countries. They also said that the two countries would work together on anti-narcotics and create a better future together. Yi Qian watched the live broadcast through the phone. When the faces of the senior military officials of Myanmar appeared on the computer, Yi Qian's eyes darkened. After a while, there was a trace of understanding in his eyes. The senior military officials of Myanmar, who expressed their determination to stop the drug, was not someone else. They had cooperated with Cobra before, and in the end, they died because of Cobra. General Min Lai died and cut off the cooperation. If it weren't for that time when they went to Myanmar to rescue Yi Jin, she wouldn't have personally stabbed Captain Xia's chest with a sharp knife with K7, and she wouldn't have heard the words Min Lai. After Xia Jinyuan came back, he didn't tell her that Min Lai was a senior officer in the military of Myanmar. The anti-drug police should have noticed it. However, because there was no definite evidence, and he was in a high position, it was completely beyond the scope of the anti-drug police's investigation. But this time, when Yi Jian, who was staring at the TV, heard the translation of General Min Lai, she immediately thought of the name Min Lai she had heard in Myanmar, and the driver also mentioned General. Putting the two together, it was clear who the real boss behind Lena was. As a senior military official in Myanmar's, even Lena was one of his people. Leaving her in the forest behind the nest and turning her into a small mountain of bones was one of the crimes committed by Min Lai, the boss behind Lena, the general that the driver mentioned. Why could the missing girl smoothly leave the country and go to various foreign countries? Why could drug dealers like Lena smoothly expand their influence in the Golden Triangle? Why could they smoothly transport drugs out of Myanmar and sell them all over the world? Now, there was finally a reasonable explanation. General Min Lai acted as their protection. Chapter 4707. Yi Qian was in a good mood after accidentally discovering Lena's boss. However, Lena's mood was not as good in the room next door, especially when she saw the Laotian military destroy all the drugs they had seized. Lena's face instantly turned pale. The drugs that were destroyed were all money, and money was the general's life. He needed a lot of money to purchase weapons and a lot of money to maintain his power. Now, someone had destroyed his life right in front of him. Then, when she went to see him, she would definitely suffer the general's wrath. All of the general's subordinates knew that the general's wrath was not pointed at your nose and scolded you. Instead, he would directly take out his gun and kill those he deemed useless. She worked so hard for the general only because she wanted the general to know that she was useful. Killing her would be the biggest loss. Now she was beginning to worry that the general would vent all his anger on her. She was worried that she would not return. Lena did not dare to watch the TV anymore. She was so anxious that she could not even sit still. She had to think of a way. What should she think of? That's right. First of all, she had to divert the general's anger away. It would be best if he diverted it to someone else. But who? 5 minutes later, the door to Yi Qian's room was pushed open. Lena, who was supposed to be resting in the room next door, walked in arrogantly. Yi Qian was still watching the TV. He carefully memorized all the guards around General Min Lai, including the bodyguards who had blended into the crowd. She memorized every single face that appeared on screen. Yi Qian did not miss a single one of them. so that he would be able to recognize them at a glance in the future. When Lena entered the room, Yi Qian immediately stood up and greeted her obediently. "Big sister Lena, yes." Lena responded with a straight face. She walked straight to the single lounge chair in the room and sat down. Even though she was sitting down, her aura was not weak at all. Even her gaze was condescending. In her eyes, Yi Qian was as insignificant as a speck of dust. His life depended on her words and her gaze. "Seeing that you've been obedient for the past few days, I'll take you to a place tonight to meet a big shot." He turned his gaze to the TV and saw a reporter from the West holding a microphone in front of General Min Lai. The reporter asked if Myanmar had made any big moves on drug control recently. He even raised a very sensitive question. "General, may I ask if the Burmese military is acting as a protective umbrella for the local drug dealers? If this is true, does the general know about it?" The only thing missing was asking, "Excuse me, is the general also an umbrella for the local drug dealers?" General Min Lai's face suddenly turned cold. He stopped walking and personally took the microphone from the Western reporter. He faced the camera and said righteously, "Our Burmese military will never act as a shield for drug traffickers. No army will do anything that endangers society, let alone intentionally commit crimes." Yi Qian, who was still standing, smirked. Of course, they would not act as a protection for drug dealers. They would only sell drugs themselves. People's army? Haha, Myanmar doesn't have many people's army. The warlords and local armed forces are all built to protect their personal power. Isn't General Min Lai afraid that the wind will hurt his teeth if he speaks so pompously in front of the media? Chapter 4708. The person who asked the question was a reporter from a Western country. Lena's body tensed up when she heard the reporter's question. Lena, whose carefully manicured nails were broken in several places, took out her phone. Her face was so gloomy that water was dripping from it. She dialed a number, and she didn't avoid telling Yi Qian what to do. She only gave orders in English in front of Yi Qian, the Western reporter who appeared on TV at 11:03 in the morning. Find a chance to teach him a lesson. She could only teach him a lesson, not kill him. It would be too obvious if she killed him. It would be the same as telling the world that the Burmese military was protecting the local drug dealers. Because of the Western reporter's exposure, the Burmese military killed the Western reporter in anger. Lena really wanted to kill the Western reporter who asked the question, but the situation didn't allow her to do so. The person on the other side of the phone received the order and didn't ask too many questions. He just answered a few simple questions and knew who the target was. After hanging up the phone, Lena took a few deep breaths to disperse the depression in her chest. Tonight, she had to bring the human goods in front of her. She needed her to divert the general's anger. Otherwise, she would definitely become the general's punching bag. His gaze was so cold that it seemed to be filled with filth. Once again, he brazenly sized up Yi Qian and estimated the value of Yi Qian. Yi Qian quickly glanced at Lena timidly. The moment their eyes met, Yi Qian was so scared that his shoulders tightened and he trembled like a frightened chick. Seeing this, Lena's sexy red lips curved into a cold smile. She liked to see the fear on these young girls' faces. They all thought that they were young and beautiful and that they would definitely succeed. In reality, she would make them wish they were dead. The feeling of torturing people was really satisfying. Lena, who was playing with her fingers, stood up and waved her hand. The bodyguard who guarded Yi Qian all day walked to Lena's side and knelt by her legs. He reached out and massaged Lena's legs. Yi Qian played with her fingers anxiously and lowered her head, not daring to look. After being trained by Lena for nearly 3 months, she had seen far too much of the dark side of human nature. Bondage, whipping, burning needles. Whenever a girl who was trained by Lena did not do a good job or did something that she was satisfied with, they would definitely be subjected to all sorts of abuse that she had never heard of before. The girl screamed while Lena laughed out loud. She enjoyed it very much. Yi Qian was burned with wax once because she didn't cooperate with the abuse of another girl kidnapped from Thailand. Those 3 months, Yi Qian's eyes turned red. She used to think that she had received the most unfair and darkest treatment. It was not until she fell into Lena's hands that she realized that the true darkness was something that could not be seen at all. It was something that could not be made public or reported. It was something that was completely hidden under an iceberg. She could vaguely hear the screams of the tortured girls and Lena's cold laughter. If she didn't get rid of this woman, who knew how many more innocent girls would die in her hands? At noon, a hotel waiter delivered food. Since Lena was in the same room, the waiter delivered a sumptuous lunch directly to the room. Yiqian also came into contact with strangers other than the bodyguard and Lena. The waiter who pushed the lunch and bowed and greeted her. Yiqian walked over and whispered in Burmese, "I'll go with you," before the waiter could refuse. Yiqian had already walked around him. With a light tug of her arm, something small and delicate fell into her palm. When she turned around, there was nothing in her hand. Chapter 4709. No one noticed what Yiqian had done. Even the waiter didn't know that his belongings had fallen into someone else's hands. Lena and the bodyguards in the room had been watching Yiqian's every move, but they didn't notice anything either. They only saw Yiqian walk past the waiter. He didn't do anything else. Lena didn't stop Yiqian, and the bodyguards naturally didn't stop him either. Yiqian only dared to suggest that she go with the waiter because he knew Lena's preferences. As a woman who liked to be served like a queen, Yiqian's suggestion wouldn't make her feel disgusted. This was one of Lena's fatal flaws. Unfortunately, she didn't realize it herself. The waiter first glanced at Lena. He knew who was the one who made the decisions in the room. Seeing that Lena didn't react, he dared to turn slightly. Yiqian softly said, "Thank you." Without choosing, he directly picked up a white porcelain bowl with a stainless steel lid. The waiter only had time to say, "It's hot," in Burmese. Yiqian, who was holding the bowl with both hands, paled. However, he didn't shout out loud. He just quickly put the bowl back in the dining car. Pa! The bowl of soup fell from Yiqian's hands. The boiling soup splashed onto Yiqian's legs and feet, which immediately turned red. "Sister Lena, I'm sorry. Yiqian immediately knelt on the ground and admitted his mistake. Even if the ground was covered in soup and the porcelain shards were sharp, he still knelt down straight. All for a chance to go to the bathroom. Lena, who was sitting like a queen, frowned when she saw Yiqian kneeling on the sharp porcelain shards. The waiter was also frightened. He didn't dare to move. He stood beside the dining car with his head bowed, waiting for Lena's anger. Lena didn't speak immediately. She stared at Yiqian with interest. Her gaze slowly moved from Yiqian's face to his knees. The corners of her mouth curled up as she played with her fingers. The fabric of the traditional skirt in Laos was not very thin, but in order to make herself look really scared, Yiqian chose to kneel down in a straight and forceful manner. Some of the sharp edges of the skirt pierced through the fabric and into Yiqian's knees. Yiqian's face turned pale from the blunt pain, but she didn't care about the pain. Instead, she was worried about Lena's anger. Because of her fear, she didn't choose to kneel down immediately. Blood flowed out, staining the cloth. Yiqian, who looked like he didn't even dare to breathe loudly, finally crawled on the ground. Lena's anger dissipated when she saw his lowly appearance. "Get up." After about 5 minutes, Lena reckoned that it was about time. If she continued to kneel, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to see the general tonight. Thus, she reluctantly opened her mouth. Yiqian got up. She still needed to thank Lena profusely. Being a spy wasn't easy, especially when you fell into the hands of someone like Lena. If you weren't careful, Lena would immediately take care of you. Yiqian was able to survive until now because of her disguise. Yiqian staggered to her feet. She whispered to the waiter, "Sorry, please give me a minute. I'll be quick." Lena raised an eyebrow. She believed that the human goods under her control wouldn't be able to play any tricks under her watch. As long as she didn't leave the room, what tricks could she play? The sound of running water came from the bathroom. She could also vaguely hear the sound of someone crying out in pain. Lena, with her legs crossed, changed her position lazily and waved at the waiter who didn't dare to move. An English text message was sent to Captain Deng's phone. Chapter 4710. General Min Lai, Lena, the Burmese military controlled the drug chain. Girls from Thailand, Myanmar, and China abroad. Location: Nasai Village, 327 kilometers north of Kabang. In a five-star hotel on the border of Laos, Yi Chien, who had just washed up, lowered his head and placed all the dishes on the table. When the waiter bent down again, the phone was still in his pocket, showing a small corner. Of course, there was no trace of the phone. Captain Deng, who was leading the team to check the passing cars, felt a vibration in his pocket. He waved his hand to signal the car to stop and let the anti-narcotics police check it while he went to the side to check his phone. When he saw the content of the message, Captain Deng's suntanned face suddenly lit up with joy, but he quickly calmed down. He was used to big storms and big waves. No matter how big the surprise was, it was just a small ripple, and it wouldn't even show on his face. However, the surprise this time was too big. It came without any preparation, and it came when their investigation was in a deadlock. Captain Deng's suppressed feelings for the past few days all disappeared in an instant. Holding the phone tightly, he rushed back to the bulletproof car and conveyed the news to the person in charge of the case. To be safe, Captain Deng didn't say too much over the phone. He only said that there was a big progress in the mysterious woman's identity. That afternoon, the criminal investigation team, the anti-narcotics team, and the border police force in Sherry City gathered and held another top-secret meeting. All the meetings were dictated, no paper materials were allowed, and no communication devices were allowed. People sat in the meeting room and listened to it and memorized it. When they left the meeting room, they were the only ones who knew the contents of the meeting. They were not allowed to tell anyone else. As a mysterious woman's identity surfaced, so did the protection behind her. It was General Min Lai, the most powerful warlord in Myanmar. This result was not that surprising. It just made all the participants feel a chill in their hearts. The Burmese military was involved in drug trafficking and became the biggest protection for the drug traffickers in the Golden Triangle. It had always been a headache for the Burmese government, but the government didn't have the ability to stop it. If they stopped too much, the warlords would retaliate. According to the information from the front line, girls went missing not only in our country, but also in Thailand, Myanmar, and Myanmar. With Min Lai's intervention, all the missing girls successfully entered Myanmar and were sent to this woman named Lena. After she trained them, they were sent to other countries and used special services to open up their drug markets. Although the information from the front doesn't clearly state what kind of special service is provided, we can all imagine how cruel the Golden Triangle drug dealers are. Apart from Thailand, Laos, and Myanmar, the Chinese side has a trafficking route for Lena. They need our criminal investigation unit to completely destroy all the trafficking routes operated by this mature assembly line. The border police will increase the intensity of the inspection. We can't let anyone go. We also need to increase the border patrols, especially the mountain range between the two countries. We need to launch a comprehensive patrol all over the country, carry out inspections of mobile personnel and passing vehicles. Police with household registration in all villages and towns will enter villages and remote villages to conduct population surveys. Following Yi Qian's message, a large-scale and unprecedentedly strict inspection was carried out throughout the country that afternoon. Bus stations and train stations became the first focus of inspection, and the same was true for vehicles passing by on highways. Chapter 4711. Night enveloped the land in Laos. The hustle and bustle of the day had completely died down. Even the receptionist in the hotel was a little drowsy. She closed her eyes from time to time, then suddenly woke up with a start. She hurriedly drank a few mouthfuls of strong tea, yawned, and rubbed her eyes to wake up on duty. The mirrored elevator doors opened with a ding. The sound of high heels stepping on the polished tiles first entered the receptionist's ears. It was like the sound of a death bell, instantly waking her up. The three receptionists quickly stood up and listened to the sound of footsteps. When the guests appeared, they stood up with smiles on their faces and greeted them in Laos. The magnificent hotel lobby instantly became a little more noisy because of the group of people coming out in the middle of the night. However, the noisy atmosphere didn't seem right. Everyone was silent, and there was a sense of strangeness that made the receptionist not dare to take a second look. This was especially true for the woman who was walking at the front. She was wearing a baseball cap that covered most of her face. Although every step she took was full of vigor, her body movements were very stiff. It was as if she was going to do something big, or as if she was going to die. The thought flashed through the receptionist's mind. She secretly patted her head and warned herself not to think too much. The revolving doors turned, and the group of people left the hotel in a few breaths. There were two cars parked outside. One was a 4-box sedan, and the other was a SUV. The bodyguard, who was one step ahead, opened the door of the sedan. Lena got in immediately. Yi Qian naturally walked towards the SUV. Before he reached it, Lena, who was sitting in the car, said coldly, "Come here." The two simple words were suffused with a sinister chill. Everyone slightly lowered their heads. They all knew that their sister Lena was in a very bad mood. No one dared to provoke her. The subordinates who had been by Lena's side for many years all knew that as long as Lena was angry, she would definitely vent all her anger on them. As for who would be the unlucky person who would suffer Lena's anger today, they didn't want it to be them. Therefore, these people were very used to protecting themselves. "Hurry up. Don't dawdle." The bodyguard behind Yi Qian heard this and couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. He lowered his voice and urged the unlucky person to hurry up. If she delayed, who knew who would become the next unlucky person? Yi Qian, whose knees were pierced by the shards, pursed his lips and obediently turned around and walked towards the black sedan. The car door closed, and the two cars left the hotel with a roar. Someone in the dark put down his binoculars and reported in a low voice through the wireless earpiece. "Roger, Roger. The radar in the vehicle has been activated. The vehicle has been successfully located. Please evacuate immediately," someone on the other side of the wireless headset replied coldly. Soon, at a certain border in China, a series of complicated codes flashed on several computer screens. As the codes kept changing, a small frame with a thin green edge suddenly popped up on the computer that was connected to the satellite map. A red radar dot kept flashing, and the information outside the small frame representing the region, position, coordinates, latitude, and longitude kept changing as the radar dot flashed. At noon, Yi Qian passed the news to Captain Deng. Before the tripartite meeting in Sherry City, Captain Deng first sent the best scouts in the entire Yun Province Border Narcotics Unit to Laos. With the information provided by Yi Qian, it wasn't difficult to find Lena. General Min Lai was in Laos, and Yi Qian and the second female target had appeared in the border city where General Min Lai was a few days ago. In addition, the phone used to send the message was the city's number. The 4 scouts went straight to the city. Chapter 47:12. Then, through the phone number, they could find a phone number with the highest call frequency. The investigators could then pretend to call the wrong number, and within 5 minutes, they could find out where the owner of the phone was working. For investigators like this, there was no difficulty at all. As long as there was a clue, they could follow the vine to the melon. In the end, they could even find out the 18 generations of the other party's ancestors. Committing a crime required a high IQ. Those with low IQs were better off following the rules. The entire route of the car was under the control of the anti-narcotics police. This was something that Yi Qian did not expect. She also did not expect that the anti-narcotics police would enter Laos in less than 10 hours with just a text message and a phone number. They even installed a tracking radar on the car that Lena usually rode in. Not only did they install a radar device, but they also installed a listening device. As long as someone spoke in the car, it would be clearly heard. This made it easier for the anti-narcotics police to track Lena's movements. However, to prevent the radar device from being discovered, it would only be activated when the car was moving. Once the car turned off, the signal would disappear. This had the biggest drawback. They could not track the car's route in time. But there was no other way. They could only compromise with this. The car started and the radar device was activated. While the border anti-narcotics police were watching the car's route, they could clearly hear the sound of the car door closing. Captain Deng, who was monitoring the situation, raised his hand slightly and made a pressing motion. Several anti-narcotics police officers in the office who participated in the operation held their breaths and focused. On the other side, they had already adjusted the recording. As long as the other party spoke, all their voices would be recorded. This would be the most powerful evidence. Several anti-narcotics policemen, including Captain Deng, were ready, but they suddenly heard the sound of 2 slaps, which made everyone's expression freeze. This was someone being slapped. A cold female voice sounded. "Why are you so slow? Do you want me to go over and invite you over?" "Sister Lena, I didn't." A timid voice was heard. This voice, the anti-narcotics police officers looked at each other. Their faces instantly tensed up. Wasn't this the voice of the female soldier they sent out? As soon as the timid voice finished speaking, several anti-narcotics police officers heard 2 more slaps. Captain Deng clenched his fists and slammed them on the table. With a cold expression, he gritted his teeth and said, "This is too much." This was not too much. "Boss, we have to get rid of this woman as soon as possible. Who knows how many girls will suffer as long as she lives." "Boss, the village provided by the female soldier is absolutely reliable. We can bypass General Min Lai and cooperate with the Shan State Police to see if we can solve it directly." The 4 slaps made the anti-narcotics police angry. Although they knew that the female soldiers they sent out would definitely be treated unfairly and might even lose their lives, but knowing and accepting were 2 completely different things. From an emotional point of view, it was very difficult for them to accept this. But from the overall situation and from a rational point of view, they could only remain calm. Just as Captain Deng was about to say something, Lena's cold voice sounded again. "From now on, you will follow behind me the whole time. Without my permission, you are not allowed to say a word. If you dare to disobey me again, you'll end up like the pile of bones in the back mountain. Do you understand?" She spoke in Burmese, and the anti-narcotics officers in charge of the border inspection were all fluent in Burmese. Therefore, they could hear every word that Lena said clearly. Chapter 47:13. The pile of bones at the back of the mountain. In other words, this woman named Lena had killed countless missing girls. Well, what good would come of falling into the hands of a woman like her? If the female soldiers sent out weren't smart and knew how to protect themselves, they probably wouldn't have heard her voice. Yi Qian, who had been slapped several times in a row in the car, nodded vigorously as if she was afraid that Lena wouldn't see. Her face was burning with pain, but she didn't dare to say anything. She didn't even have the courage to speak. She could only nod to show that she understood and remembered. Lena's phone vibrated. She took out her phone and took a look. A trace of fear flashed through her eyes. She took a few deep breaths before picking up the phone. "General, it's Lena." General Min Lai." While Yi Qian's spirits were lifted, so were the furious anti-narcotics officers. Could it be that Lena was going to see General Min Lai now? Yi Qian's eyes narrowed. She even held her breath slightly. She lowered her eyes and leaned a little closer to Lena. She pricked up her ears to listen. The car's soundproofing was quite good. Yi Qian could hear the voice of a middle-aged man who was used to giving orders and had a strong deterrence. "Come as soon as possible. There are many things I need to ask you personally. Half an hour. If you don't arrive in half an hour, think of a way to deal with yourself." On the other side of the phone, General Min Lai, who was standing in the dense forest, didn't wait for Lena to answer. He handed the phone over. The person who took the phone was none other than the driver who had picked up Lena that day. He was also General Min Lai's adjutant and one of his most trusted subordinates. Lena shuddered violently. She almost lost her grip on the phone. She swallowed hard and lowered her voice. Her attitude instantly fell from being high and mighty to being in the mud. "General, I'll definitely be there. I won't let you down." "Lena, General's time is limited. He doesn't like to waste time on useless people. You still have half an hour to live." The driver's voice did not pull Lena back from the depths of hell. Instead, it sent her straight to the 18th level of hell. Lena's bright red lips were completely wiped clean, and her face was as pale as a sheet of lead paper. She was well aware of General Minlay's character. He was a man of his word, never changed his mind, and never said anything unnecessary. He wanted her to take care of herself. It was not a threat, but an order. I understand. Please tell the general that Lena will definitely arrive on time. After all, Lena has never been late or disobeyed any of the general's orders. Even though her hands were trembling from fear, Lena's voice was still steady as she spoke in a calm and graceful manner. She knew that if she panicked now, she would lose even half an hour of her life. Everyone was afraid of the general's methods. After hanging up, Lena took a long time to move the phone away from her ear. However, she didn't move it away. Instead, it suddenly fell to the ground. Her hand was like cooked noodles, limp and powerless. Dong! The phone fell from Yi Qian's hand. Just as he was about to bend down to pick it up, Lena, who was so scared that her whole body was trembling, suddenly raised her hand and pounded on Yi Qian like a mad woman in the narrow space of the car. Who told you to move? Did I say you could move? Who told you to pick up my phone? Did I say you could pick up my phone? She vented all her fear on Yi Qian. Not only did she pound on Yi Qian with her fist, but she also grabbed the hair on the back of his head with her left hand. The anti-narcotics police could clearly hear Yi Qian gasping in pain. Chapter 47:14. The sound was very familiar, so familiar that the narcotics officers who were listening carefully clenched their fists so tightly that their knuckles cracked. It was the sound of a slap. Target Lena number 2 was hitting the female soldier they sent out again. They could hear the sound, but they couldn't do anything. They could only listen. Even if they heard the anger in their chests, they could only listen. Who told you not to behave? Who told you to move around? Slap, slap. Yi Qian's face had already received countless slaps. Left and right, one after the other. Forced to raise his head, Yi Qian could only cry and beg for mercy. Even the corners of the narcotics officers' eyes turned red. However, the scene was even more brutal than what they had heard. Lena, who had been frightened by General Minlai, turned all the fear in her heart into anger and directed all her anger at Yi Qian. Not only did she use her fists, but she also kept kicking Yi Qian. Don't hit me, Sister Lena. Please, don't hit me. It hurts, it hurts. Sister Lena, I know I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please, don't hit me. It hurts, it hurts. In the car, Yi Qian painfully begged for mercy. The bodyguard and the driver were sitting in the front seat. The two of them quietly looked back through the rearview mirror and saw Lena's ferocious face. The two of them were relieved. Fortunately, they weren't the ones being hit. Fortunately, they had brought out a human good. Otherwise, they would have become the punching bags under Sister Lena's feet. Hit her. It would be best if all the anger in her heart disappeared. Only then would they be safer. As for the human good, who was being hit, she was unlucky to have fallen into Sister Lena's hands. It was Sister Lena's mercy that she didn't immediately kill her. Taking a few hits to appease Sister Lena's anger was her honor. In the eyes of these people, fighting and killing didn't mean anything. The main thing was that they could do whatever they wanted. To them, humanity was like trash that had long been thrown away. In the narrow space of the car, Yi Qian's screams pierced the hearts of the narcotics officers. Endure, they had to endure. A little impatience would spoil the big plan. On the other hand, it meant that the female soldiers they sent out were very successful. They didn't arouse the slightest bit of suspicion or make the other party feel that something was amiss. At least their lives weren't threatened for the time being. This was the only way he could control the anger in his heart. Lena was finally tired. Her arms and legs were sore. She glared fiercely at the thin figure sitting in the gap between the seats. Her chest was heaving up and down rapidly. She rolled down the window again, letting the mountain wind blow in and blow away the last trace of fear in her heart. The bodyguard in the front row respectfully handed over a bottle of mineral water. Sister Lena, have some water. As for the figure that was beaten into the narrow gap, The bodyguards didn't even glance at her. People who weren't important would lose their lives sooner or later. They were already used to it and didn't feel that Lena had done anything wrong. Lena took the bottle of mineral water and was just about to drink when the driver happened to pass by a corner. The wheels of the car ran over the car, and the whole car jerked twice. Before the water could be drunk, it spilled onto Lena's clothes. The anger that had been suppressed with great difficulty was ignited again. The driver didn't notice anything strange, but the bodyguard did. He was frightened and quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, Sister Lena. The car will be very bumpy when we go up the mountain. Please bear with it." Only then did the driver realize that he was in big trouble. He quickly apologized. "Sister Lena, I didn't do it on purpose. The general needs you to go over early. I didn't dare to slow down." Chapter 47:15. The chauffeur's explanation made Lena's expression turn slightly better. Although Lena could be cruel to Yi Qian, she was still kind to the people who had gone through life and death with her. Although she was cruel, she knew that when she was in danger, it was always the people around her who helped her escape, so she couldn't go too far. Lena didn't care too much and drank half the bottle of water. She then twisted the plastic bottle until it squeaked. She was already upset to begin with, but she heard soft sobbing in the car. Lena gripped the bottle tightly, and in the end, she poured the rest of the water on Yi Qian's head. The cold water suddenly poured down on Yi Qian's head. The startled Yi Qian screamed, and Lena kicked Yi Qian's shoulder again. Fortunately, Lena had specially worn a sports outfit for the trip to the mountains. She even changed her shoes into sneakers, so even though she kept kicking Yi Qian, she was still able to withstand it. If she had worn her usual stilettos, then Yi Qian would have suffered greatly today. Yi Qian had to lower herself to make Lena think that she was weak and easy to bully. No matter how she hit or scolded her, she wouldn't do anything other than scold her. Just as the narcotics police thought, Yi Qian's disguise was very successful. Lena didn't suspect anything, and neither did the bodyguards guarding her. No matter how much she beat Yi Qian, her life wasn't in danger. After hitting and splashing water on Yi Qian, Lena felt that she still had some anger in her heart. She wanted to teach Yi Qian a lesson, but then she remembered that she would have to push Yi Qian out to face the general's anger later. She was afraid that if she beat Yi Qian to death, she would lose a punching bag. Even though her expression was very ugly, she endured it. She endured her punches, but her mouth didn't. She shouted angrily, "You disheartened thing, shut up. If you cry again, I'll push you into the car and run you over. Shut up. No more crying." Crying, crying, crying. She didn't do anything for her, but she still had the face to cry. Yi Qian shut her mouth, but she did not get up from her seat. Without Lena's orders, she could not get up, otherwise she would be beaten again. Although beating Lena was beneficial in relaxing her vigilance, it wasn't her intention to be beaten so often. Some beatings were unavoidable, and some beatings should be avoided as much as possible. Lena did not allow Yi Qian to sit up. To her, these girls that were sent to her were worse than dogs. If she was in a good mood, she would still tease dogs. As for these lowly human goods, they could only be squashed to death by her. The road conditions in Laos were the same. The mountain roads leading to the various villages were all dirt roads. There was not a single asphalt road. General Min Lai was located in a small village on the border of Laos. It was very close to the place where he destroyed the drugs today. It was so close that he could see the place where he destroyed the drugs during the day. Today, he had personally destroyed all the drugs he had sent to various countries. How many tens of thousands of US dollars were there? There were tens of millions of US dollars. Tens of millions of US dollars were gone just like that. They were all destroyed in one go. He didn't even have time to prepare for rescue. If it weren't for the incompetence of his subordinates, he wouldn't have had to pay such a huge price and suffer such a huge loss. Money, it was all money. Tens of millions of US dollars could buy him so much equipment. In the end, it was all destroyed right under his nose. General Min Lai's face was so pale that it was suffused with a bone-chilling aura. The adjutant walked over, lowered his head, and said softly, "General, Lena is waiting for your orders outside. Tell her to get her ass over here alone." The more he thought about it, the more his heart ached. The anger in General Minlai's heart was on the verge of exploding. Lena was so unlucky to run into it. Chapter 47:16. Lena, who had already arrived, led the group into the forest. They would reach General Minlai's location soon. "Is the general still angry?" Lena asked in a low voice when she saw the adjutant. She didn't dare to show her anxiety, in case the adjutant told the general that she couldn't handle things properly. "The general requests your presence." The adjutant didn't say anything unnecessary. Although he had some friendship with Lena, it wasn't enough for him to bear the general's anger. It was impossible for him to find out everything about the general from him. Lena knew that the adjutant was a tough character who was hard to deal with. She lowered her eyes and turned her head to Yi Jian. "What are you still standing there for? Follow me." Yi Jian started to move, but the adjutant raised his hand to stop him. "Lena, the general only asked you to go alone. The rest of you, wait outside. I have something to report to the general." She has to go. Lena's face couldn't be described as stiff. It was as hard as a rock. She couldn't even control her lips when she spoke. 3 more minutes. The adjutant only listened to General Minlai's orders. He didn't care what Lena said. If she had anything to say, she could directly report it to the general. The general would make his own decision. It wasn't up to an adjutant to interfere. Knowing that there was no room for negotiation, Lena's fingers trembled. She brought Yi Jian out to bear the general's anger, but now she couldn't even bring him over. Lena didn't have much time to dawdle. She had to go alone immediately. Otherwise, the general would really make her kill herself. Yi Jian was very disappointed that she couldn't go. She wanted to confirm with her own eyes whether it was General Minlai or not. Both of them wanted to go, but the general didn't agree. Lena, who was usually arrogant in front of Yi Jian, couldn't do anything about it. She could only walk out of the forest alone. She saw General Minlai standing around without any shelter. The edge of the open space extended out from the mountain. It was dark outside, and below was a tall cliff. Lena started to panic and fear when she saw General Minlai's back. Every step she took felt like she was walking on a sharp knife. Every step she took made her heart tremble with fear. She was afraid of the warlord in front of her who held her life and death in his hands. She had been afraid for more than 10 years. The adjutant didn't follow her. The people around them were all special forces soldiers from Myanmar. They had secretly entered Laos to protect the general's safety. So, it wouldn't be inappropriate for Lena to come alone. General Minlai heard the sound of approaching footsteps behind him, and he turned around with a cold look in his eyes. Lena jumped in fright. She didn't expect the general to turn around so suddenly, and she broke out in a cold sweat. "Lena, do you know why you're still alive?" General Minlai spoke calmly without a trace of anger. His expression was as calm as his voice, but Lena was so frightened that her knees went weak. Although his voice and expression were calm, the way he looked at her was so cold that it was as if he would personally raise his gun and kill her in the next second. Lena, who didn't want to die, knelt in front of General Minlai and bowed deeply. "It's because of your magnanimity that I'm still alive." Her words made General Minlai laugh coldly. He looked at the woman kneeling in front of him with eyes as cold as if he was looking at a dead person. Chapter 47:17. Lena, who didn't dare to raise her head, broke out in a cold sweat. She even pressed her forehead against the grass, trying her best to let General Minlai see her humbleness. "No, it's because you've brought me considerable benefits. That's why I, who never put a woman in an important position, put you in an important position. However, I'm very disappointed in you. Because of your failure, I lost tens of millions of dollars in Laos. Do you know how many guns and ammunition I can buy with tens of millions of dollars? Do you know how many soldiers I can feed with tens of millions of dollars?" Lena, who was trembling, gulped and replied shakily, "General, I'll definitely try my best to recover this loss. Please." In the forest, the branches swayed, and a night bird flapped its wings and suddenly flew into the dark sky. General Minlai's hand had already reached for the pistol at his waist. He looked from Lena to the night bird that flew out of the forest. Under the clear moonlight, General Minlai's face was even fiercer than Lena's. It was a ferocious look that said he was not afraid of anyone and everything. Lena, who was kneeling, didn't feel anything strange. She was so scared that her back was covered in cold sweat. Just as she was about to finish her sentence, gunshots suddenly came from the forest. Lena, who was running, quickly pulled out a pistol from her waist. She jumped up nimbly and protected General Minlai behind her. "General, be careful." At this moment, Lena was thankful for the sudden gunshots. It gave her the chance to protect General Minlai and change the situation in front of her. The moonlight shone on the ground. General Minlai, who was standing completely in the moonlight, was still calm in the face of the gunshots. He wasn't surprised at all. The gunshots were fired by the soldiers hidden in the dark. Someone had entered the forest and was discovered by his soldiers. Lena didn't know. She held the pistol tightly and protected General Minlai. She said, "General, please retreat immediately. I'll cover you." General Minlai cherished his life. Although the money was destroyed, as long as he was alive, he could earn it back. However, he had nowhere to retreat now. Behind him was a cliff, and in front of him was the way out. Kill them all. Leave one alive. He wanted to see who wanted to kill him. They even dared to come to Laos. The Burmese special forces that were hiding in the dark had already come out, and the gunshots became more intense. The adjutant who was standing outside ran over and said, "General, we need to evacuate immediately." Screams came from the forest. It was Yi Qian's voice. Then his voice was muffled and he was dragged to the side by the bodyguards to hide. "Shout again, and I'll shoot you first." The bodyguard pulled out his gun and glared at Yi Qian fiercely. He almost got shot when she screamed just now. Yi Qian was trembling all over. The muzzle of the gun was pressed hard against her temple. It was so close to her temple that it hurt. She was really worried that the gun would go off by accident. She nodded desperately, indicating that she would definitely not scream again. Bullets whizzed past overhead, hitting tree trunks and knocking down leaves. The air was filled with the scent of grass. Yi Qian crouched down tightly, hoping that these guys who suddenly appeared to shoot at General Minlai and his men would kill them all. The dark clouds slowly covered the cold moon, and the moonlight covered the clouds. The surrounding forest, which had no light at all, became pitch black. The bodyguard who was preventing Yi Qian from escaping was suddenly shocked. He immediately reached out to grab the girl beside him. He caught her, and the cold breath in his throat slowly exhaled. Chapter 47:18. The gunshots were as dense as rain, coming from all directions. Yi Qian, who was crouching down, would not run away casually. If she ran away now, she would become a live target. She would be shot full of holes before she could even take a few steps. She cherished her life. She still wanted to go back alive to attend the graduation ceremony. "Don't move. Stay here. You'll die faster if you move." The forest was too dark. The bodyguard was worried that Yi Qian would take advantage of the chaos to escape, so he used this to scare Yi Qian. Yi Qian cried as she replied, "I won't run. I won't run. Sister Lena won't let me go. She'll kill me. I won't run. I won't run." The bodyguard was relieved. Sister Lena was very capable. No human goods had ever escaped from her hands. Not a single one. Those who didn't behave had been found out by Sister Lena a long time ago. The bodyguard who threatened Yi Qian didn't know that he had almost stepped into hell. When the gunshots rang out, Yi Qian wanted to kill the bodyguard who had been watching her all day. She still wanted to kill him, even when the bodyguard warned her. The bodyguard said, "You'll die faster if you move." Only then did Yi Qian's killing intent dissipate. If the bodyguard died and she was still alive, with Lena's paranoia, she would definitely become suspicious. Once she became suspicious, And with her personality of willing to kill 1,000 by mistake, no amount of explanation would work, and Lena would directly take care of her. She still didn't know if the narcotics police would take action. She still needed to stay by Lena's side and find more clues to send back to China. Therefore, she really couldn't move. Yi Qian became even more obedient after her killing intent dissipated. She didn't move at all. In order to let the bodyguard focus on their surroundings, she even grabbed the corner of the bodyguard's shirt tightly. She was telling the bodyguard that she was still there and didn't dare to run away. Yi Qian's cooperation allowed the bodyguard to focus more on their surroundings. The gunshots were too chaotic, so he didn't dare to show himself. He could only hide well. It was impossible for the general to enter Laos alone. He would definitely bring his troops in secretly. With the soldiers around the general, there was no need for them to jump out and risk their lives. The bodyguard guarding Yi Jian was cautious and didn't come out, but the two bodyguards who had been following Lena didn't. They reacted quickly and hid first. Then, they worked together to shoot in Lena's direction. The complex terrain of the forest provided excellent shelter for everyone. The soldiers General Min Lai had brought with him had already scouted out the forest during the day, and the assassins who tried to sneak in during the night were all killed by the soldiers one by one. General Min Lai, who was surrounded by 4 soldiers, stared fiercely at the forest where gunshots were coming from. His lips, which had turned purple from years of smoking, curled into a sneer. 2 of them pry open their mouths. "Yes, sir," the soldier replied and informed the soldiers in the forest. At this moment, Lena let out a long sigh of relief. She was very lucky tonight. Bang, bang, bang. Bang, bang. The bullets hit the hard rock, and sparks flew. Yi Qian heard the sound of something breaking behind him. It was the sound of feet stepping on fallen leaves. But the bodyguard beside her didn't notice it. He only focused on staring ahead. If this continued, they would definitely be discovered. "When can we leave? I'm scared." Yi Qian opened his mouth. He was still crying. His voice didn't cause much of a stir in the gunshots, but it was loud enough for the people behind him to hear. The footsteps stopped, and the sound of something breaking disappeared. The bodyguard covered Yi Qian's mouth tightly again. He wished he could just choke Yi Qian to death. "Shut up." Chapter 47:19. Yi Qian, whose nose was covered, flailed his hands and feet due to the lack of oxygen, causing even more commotion. This reminded the assassins that there were people here and chose to take a detour. Even if the assassins didn't take a detour and chose to shoot, they wouldn't be shot immediately from where they were hiding. There was still enough time for them to escape. The soldiers that General Min Lai brought back weren't pushovers. Each and every one of them was brave and good at fighting. The assassins probably didn't expect that there would be so many soldiers deployed. They didn't send many people, and they weren't elites either. Against General Min Lai's soldiers, it was still fine in the early stages. But later on, when the disparity in strength began to show, they gradually lost, but they wouldn't be defeated immediately. Yi Qian, who was almost suffocated, was finally able to breathe in the smoky air. He took in big gulps of air and coughed. General Min Lai was used to all kinds of situations, and it wasn't the first time he had been assassinated. As one of the most powerful warlords in Myanmar, he was definitely a formidable person. Assassinations like this didn't catch his attention until a red light suddenly flashed. When Lena saw the red light, her expression changed drastically. She shouted, "General, be careful." It was the red light of a sniper rifle. There was a sniper. The 4 soldiers reacted even faster than Lena. When Lena opened her mouth, one of them had already pushed General Min Lai to the ground and protected him with his body. Another soldier used his body to block the red light. The large caliber bullet pierced through the air, and Lena felt something like a pebble on her face. It was both warm and sticky. It splashed all over her face. She didn't scream. She knew very well what it was that splashed on her face. It was a soldier's head that had been blown up by a bullet. The shattered skull, blood, and brain matter splattered all over her face. With a sniper, the situation was different. General Min Lai, whose face was dark, didn't even have the mood to hold Lena accountable. He didn't stay where he was and retreated under the cover of his soldiers. Lena didn't follow him closely. She only chose to retreat with him temporarily. When they entered the forest, she said to General Minlai, "General, I'll stay. I'm sure you know how I interrogate people." Only then did General Minlai's expression improve slightly. He let out a soft snort and left with his soldiers. "Leave 2 alive. Kill the rest," the adjutant ordered. The adjutant gave the order. Before he left, he gave Lena a meaningful look, but he still didn't say anything and followed the general out. Due to the sniper's attack, the soldiers in the forest began to clean up the area. The screams became more frequent. Yi Qian remained crouched on the ground. Even when the hot bullet hit the back of her hand, she did not move. It wasn't until the gunfire was a little further away from her and the bullets didn't graze her head that she moved her body. About half an hour later, all but 2 of the soldiers General Minlai had sent into the Qi Nation were killed. Lena, whose face was covered in smoke, walked out. She glanced at the 2 captives, and the first thing she did was to look for Yi Qian. She was worried that Yi Qian would take the opportunity to escape. The cold-faced bodyguard dragged Yi Qian over by his collar and pushed him in front of Lena. He then reported everything that had happened to Yi Qian. This time, Lena, who was in a good mood because she had managed to capture someone alive, didn't get angry. Instead, she thought that it was normal. How could it be abnormal for someone to scream when they heard gunshots for the first time? Fortunately, it was just a scream. I thought she would pee her pants. Lena chuckled. She glanced coldly at Yi Qian and didn't look at her anymore. The most important thing now was to pry useful information out of the captives alive. When Yi Qian saw Lena, the first thing that came to his mind was, even if he didn't kill General Minlai, he should at least kill this snake beauty. After tonight, he didn't know when he would have the chance. Yi Qian thought it was a pity, but he didn't know that the chance was not far away. Chapter 4720. Yi Qian also saw the 2 capture alive. They didn't look like soldiers or mercenaries. Instead, they looked more like thugs. They couldn't even be considered bodyguards. General Minlai didn't take everyone away. He left a few behind to assist Lena in the cleanup. After the shootout, these people didn't need Lena's orders. They entered the forest and dragged the dead out one by one so that Lena could do a head count. The sniper who appeared was also found. Yi Qian silently looked at the sniper who was carried out. A sniper who could be killed so quickly wasn't a sniper. Holding a sniper rifle didn't make him a sniper. It was said that he had even shot one of General Minlai's personal guards in the head. This meant that he was still a good marksman. It was just that he wasn't skilled enough and lost his life for nothing. Standing in the open, Lena didn't leave everything to the soldiers General Minlai left behind. She was afraid that she would disappoint General Minlai again if she left any loose ends. She cautiously ordered her subordinates to assist the soldiers in the head count. She didn't want to let anyone escape. She had no choice. She was now a criminal. If she wanted to appease General Minlai's anger, she had to make a contribution. Lena urgently needed to make a contribution to show her ability. Only then could she continue to work without fear of being executed by General Minlai at any time. That's right. If General Minlai wanted to get rid of someone, it wouldn't be considered murder. In the official word, it would be execution. Execution didn't entail criminal responsibility. But at General Minlai's level, even if someone said that he had killed someone, it wouldn't cause much of a stir. He would still be the victor. At around 2 o'clock in the morning, a total of 28 corpses were counted. These people were used to it and didn't feel uncomfortable at all. The thick smell of blood in the air made Yi Qian hold her breath. She happened to be standing downwind. The wind blew and the smell of blood blew into her face. That smell was really uncomfortable. When the 2 captives saw their brothers, who were usually chatting and laughing with each other, fall down one after another, they were filled with grief and indignation, as well as hatred for General Minlai. They thought that Minlai wouldn't bring too many people in Laos to destroy the drugs. On the TV, he didn't have many people with him. They thought that there were only a few people with him. That was why they came up with the plan tonight. Little did he know that it wasn't that he didn't bring anyone with him, but that he only brought a few people with him. The rest had all sneaked into the Qi nation. Lena hadn't even interrogated them yet, but she had already been killed by their gazes over and over again. If it wasn't for her good mood tonight, the two of them would have been tormented by Lena several times before they even left the mountain. She didn't have any tools to grind people. Lena was able to obtain materials from the ground. Sharp stones, broken branches. Everything would become Lena's torture material. She had her own set of tricks that would make people crazy but not immediately kill them. Yi Qian, who had been trained by her for more than 3 months, saw it with his own eyes and shuddered. But this time, Lena didn't torture them immediately. Instead, she clapped her hands and brought the 2 captives to her. She bent down slightly and looked at them carefully. After confirming that she didn't know them, she pushed them to the side of the pile of corpses. Instead of torturing the captives, she chose to torture the dead. Torturing the dead. Once again, Yi Qian saw Lena's inhumane and cruel side. Yi Qian slightly curled his fingers and exhaled a foul breath filled with blood and rust. He silently looked away. Chapter 47:21. Lena, who was watching closely, seemed to have thought of something. She shouted someone's name. It was none other than Yi Qian's bodyguard. She ordered the bodyguard to bring Yi Qian to the front. She wanted Yi Qian to see her cruelty up close. Hurry up and leave. The bodyguard pushed Yi Qian's back. Yi Qian didn't dare to leave. Instead, he retreated step by step. No, I won't go. I won't go. You won't go? You want to be chopped into pieces like him? Fine, as long as you're willing. I'll tell Sister Lena immediately. The dark-skinned bodyguard with the typical features of a Burmese man had a fierce look in his eyes. Are you going or not? Yi Jin covered her head with her hands and was eventually dragged away by the bodyguards. Take her hands off. Let her open her eyes wide. If she doesn't look, I'll gouge her eyes out. Lena saw Yi Qian hugging his head and trembling in fear. With a cruel smile on her face, she forced Yi Qian's hands behind his back. Sister Lena, I'm begging you. I'm very obedient. Please let me go. I don't dare to look. With his head held in place, Yi Qian could see the scene clearly from up close. At that moment, Yi Qian's desire to kill Lena had reached an unbearable level. Endure. She had to endure. Although the message had been sent out, there was still no news from Captain Deng. She wasn't sure if the human trafficker in China had been eliminated or if she had other arrangements. Without receiving any news from Captain Deng, she had to endure for a while longer. Yi Qian was trembling like a cicada in winter. In response, Lena threw her head back and laughed. She pinched Yi Qian's chin and looked down at him. Since you're so obedient tonight, don't worry. I'll only let you watch. I won't really cut you. Watch carefully. Remember this and be more obedient in the future. Do you understand? Otherwise, you'll end up like them. After I kill you, I'll chop you up and feed you to the fishes in the Mekong River. Yi Jian was the meat on Lena's chopping board. The snow-white Yi Jian was the meat on Lena's chopping board. Her life and death were in Lena's hands. The smell of blood in the wind was getting thicker and thicker. He felt like vomiting from a churning Yi Qian in his stomach. Bloody, cruel, hell on earth. The 2 survivors were so infuriated by Lena's actions that they almost went crazy. They started to curse and swear, and a bunch of Burmese words came out of their mouths. Although Yi Qian had finally learned Burmese in 3 months, she still didn't know how to swear. She only knew that the other party was swearing at her. As for what the other party was swearing at her, she could only understand a little bit. Scolding people had never been her forte. But when he heard Lena being scolded, Yi Qian, who was forced to watch from a close distance, suppressed the churning in his stomach. He gently raised his hand to touch the swollen face that Lena had slapped and pursed his lips slightly. When she heard Lena being scolded, she felt very good. If there wasn't such a bloody scene, she might have even smiled. The cruel and bloody scene made her heart heavy. It was as if molten iron had been poured into her chest. It was so heavy that it made it difficult for her to breathe. As the curses of the 2 survivors became more and more unpleasant, Yi Qian realized that Lena wasn't angry at all. This abnormality made Yi Qian's expression change slightly. The poisonous beauty Lena wasn't the kind of person who would laugh after being scolded. No one in the village dared to say anything bad about her. Everyone who was in front of her was very cautious. No one dared to be presumptuous, not even daring to raise their voice. Chapter 47:22. Now that she was being scolded like this, she could still laugh. She must be up to something. The mastermind was picking her fingernails. The snake beauty giggled and said casually, "Go ahead and scold me. It's not just the two of you who are scolding me. Go ahead and scold me. I'm listening." In the face of a bloody scene that was no different from a massacre, Lena could still laugh loudly. The more she laughed, the angrier the men who were watching their brothers chop them to pieces roared like trapped beasts. Yi Qian, who had been paying attention, slowly lowered her eyes. She understood why Lena was doing this. There are thousands of ways to torture people, and the method Lena was using was one of them. She used the cruelest method that went against conscience and touched the bottom line of others to pry out useful information from the mouths of the men alive. Until one of the men said, "Brother Kun won't let you go, you bitch." Yi Qian knew that Lena had won again. Brother Kun, name Wu Jinkun, was one of the drug lords of the Golden Triangle and was once a warlord of the Shan state. His father was a fisherman and built up a family business. In his middle age, he became the richest man in the Shan state of Myanmar through drug trafficking. From then on, he recruited soldiers and spent 10 years to become a warlord of the Shan state. Wu Jinkun also became a warlord of the Shan state. But later, in Yi Qian's mind, Wu Jinkun wanted to control the whole of Myanmar. His ambition was too big, and he was besieged. The former warlord fled back to the Golden Triangle and suddenly became one of the biggest drug lords in the area 5 years later. It was rumored that Wu Jinkun and General Min Lai had a personal grudge. It was also said that Wu Jinkun and General Min Lai were as close as brothers. Later, they became enemies for their own interests. This information was not written in the information. After all, it had not been verified. However, the anti-narcotics police who accompanied her at the time took it as a topic to disturb her memory, so she remembered it. Now that the men suddenly mentioned Wu Jinkun, Yi Qian felt that the rumors might not be just rumors. There must be some inside story to spread the words of discord and enemies. If that's the case, Yi Qian, who was looking down, raised his eyes slightly. He quietly and quickly glanced at the two survivors before quickly retracting his gaze. Hundreds of thoughts ran through his mind. He could no longer suppress the churning in his stomach. As more and more severed limbs appeared in front of him, even the cold moonlight was dyed with the color of blood. Yi Jian held onto the tree trunk and vomited. The bodyguard watching over her sneered. He had no intention of dragging Yi Qian away. He continued to watch her closely and let her have a good look. "So it's Brother Cohen." Lena raised her eyebrows as she managed to glean useful information without much effort. She let out a long sigh of relief. "Finally, I can give the general a satisfactory answer." The remaining soldiers looked at the blood on the ground, then at Lena. One of them walked away and took out his phone to call General Min Lai's adjutant. Lena, who was secretly paying attention to the movements of the soldiers, smiled even wider. She said in a sweet voice, "There's an ancient Chinese saying, 'The winner is the king, and the loser is the bandit.' Now that you've lost, why are you still trying to show off in front of me? Did Big Brother Cohen send you out to scold me like a woman? Ha ha, Brother Cohen, of all the people you could have sent, why did you have to send such trash? No wonder the general has always looked down on you." I really don't blame the general. Even a stinky woman like me looks down on you. Golden Triangle drug lord? Brother Cohen, what kind of drug lord are you with these men of yours? No matter how much a fisherman acts as a boss, he's still a fisherman. Chapter 47:23. A mere fisherman actually wants to compete with a general. How laughable. Ha ha, laughable, laughable. Ha ha. The bloody wind was filled with Lena's arrogant laughter, and she kept saying insulting words to others. "Chop them up. chop them up again, and deliver them to Brother Kuen's stronghold personally. Yi Qian vomited so much that his eyes burned with pain. Now that they had obtained useful information, it was time for Lena to take care of them. Lena, who had never been scolded like this before, stopped laughing. Her mood had long been ruined. She pointed at the two men with a ferocious expression and shouted angrily, "Break all their teeth. All of them. What was the point of keeping them alive? She had endured for so long. There was no need to endure anymore." Someone raised a rock and smashed it into the two men's mouths. Their screams of pain could be heard from a radius of 10 miles. The rocks smashed into the teeth of the men. Their lips were smashed, their jaws were smashed, and their teeth were broken. Their entire faces were smashed into a bloody mess, and their bones could be seen. The two survivors who were smashed did not die immediately because the places where they were smashed were not fatal. One of them was even smashed to the point where his eyeballs popped out, but he did not die immediately. Gasping sounds could be heard from his throat. Yi Qian had never seen or heard of such a cruel sight before. He vomited until blood rushed to his head and his vision turned black. Yi Qian, who had entered the tiger's den as a spy for the first time, saw the darkness and cruelty of human nature. It was the first time he understood that the evil of human nature had no bottom line. You would never know where the bottom line of the evil of human nature was. The more Yi Qian interacted with them, the angrier he became. She had no fear, only destruction. She wanted to destroy the evil of human nature. She wanted to destroy the darkness that destroyed humanity and bred evil. Even if she had to pay with her life, she would not be able to do it. Captain Deng was right. They represented justice, the core of a stable society. Darkness was their life's goal, and they would not stop until they reached the end of their lives. Finally, the teeth of the two survivors were all shattered. They threw away the blood-stained rocks. Yi Qian even saw pieces of flesh falling off the rocks and into the grass. Lena turned on the flashlight and shone the light on the two bloody, boneless faces. She wasn't afraid. Instead, she examined them carefully. Only after confirming that all their teeth had been smashed out did she nod in satisfaction. "Not bad, well done. You'll be rewarded when we get back." Lena was quite generous to her subordinates who were willing to risk their lives for her. Otherwise, why would these people risk their lives for her? The chests of the two survivors who were smashed beyond recognition were still rising and falling slightly. When Lena took the shovel from the car and shoveled 2 handfuls of dirt to cover their faces, their weakly rising and falling chests finally calmed down. Yi Qian, who was vomiting bile, clenched her fists tightly. Lena, before she left, she would definitely kill her with her own hands. He absolutely could not allow such a savage beast to continue living and continue to harm others. Wu Jinquan's people. She needed to find an opportunity to tell Captain Deng about what had happened today. She needed to see if she could lure Wu Jinquan's people into the village and destroy Lena's nest. That way, the anti-drug police wouldn't have to risk their lives to sneak into Myanmar. They could use Wu Jinquan to destroy Lena. The car started again. This time, Yi Qian didn't get in the same car as Lena. He dragged her dirty body to the MPV and left the hell on earth behind them. Chapter 4724. The anti-narcotics police in Sherry City stayed up all night. Through the radar tracker, they found out the location of the meeting between their target, Lena, and General Min Lai. Through the eavesdropping device, they learned that the Golden Triangle drug lord, Wu Jinquan, sent people into Thailand to assassinate General Min Lai, but failed. This news immediately lifted the spirits of the anti-narcotics police in Sherry City. Soon, they had the same thought as Yi Qian. It turned out that Wu Jinquan and General Min Lai were not on good terms. It turned out that the rumors they had heard before were true. This was much easier to handle. Captain Deng was very good at using other people's strength to fight. When Wu Jinquan learned that the people he sent out were all killed by a woman of his enemy, Min Lai, he immediately sent his subordinates in Laos to check on a certain mountain. When the news was confirmed, Wu Jinquan was furious. Wu Jinquan naturally knew about Lena. They even had a business relationship, but he didn't know that she was working for his enemy, Min Lai. Don't let her die right away. I want to cut her flesh piece by piece and chop off her limbs personally. The tall and muscular drug lord, Wu Jinkuan, played with the catch-and knife that all the men and women in his clan used. His eyes were gloomy. At the same time, after a 15-day nationwide crackdown, a human trafficking black line that had been set up a year ago specifically to abduct and sell young girls and young women out of the country surfaced. In another 3 days, all the criminals involved in transnational human trafficking were arrested, and 5 criminals who resisted with weapons were killed on the spot. When Lena, who had returned to Burma to personally report the situation to General Min Lai, received the news, her phone started ringing before she could even rest after returning to the village. Lena, who had been in a good mood after receiving the reward from General Min Lai, broke her pinky nail. What's the situation at the border? Is there any news about the kidnappers? Did the Chinese contact the police in Shan State? Lena, who was holding the phone, asked fiercely. She had worked so hard to break into the Chinese human trafficking market, but it was destroyed by the Chinese police in just a year. How infuriating. The person on the other end of the phone reported the information they had collected so far. The Chinese police were cracking down, and the kidnappers just happened to enter the Chinese territory. It was a complete transaction, and the people involved were human goods. They were 4 mature young women with voluptuous figures that Lena needed. She was arrested on the spot by the Chinese police who broke in during the transaction and didn't even have time to escape. Lena's face suddenly turned gloomy. Find a chance to kill the kidnapper. There was no chance. After the kidnapper was caught, the Chinese police immediately took her away from Chelly. We don't know where she is now. Contact the informant of the Shan State Police and ask him to find out if the Chinese police have contacted the Burmese government. She needed to know if the Chinese police had gotten any useful information from the kidnappers. All right, the person on the other end of the phone hung up. As soon as the call ended, a man in a Burmese military uniform pushed open the door and walked in. The man's hand had just moved away from the phone when his body stiffened and a murderous look flashed across his face. The man who came in was a platoon leader stationed at the border of Myanmar, and the one who made the call was the company commander stationed at the border. Company commander, since the Chinese side has increased their checkpoints, should we also increase our checkpoints? The platoon leader who came and sat down and spoke in a low voice. The company commander, who had a guilty conscience, flashed his eyes slightly, and his heart quietly relaxed. Chapter 4725. With the sudden increase in checkpoints at the Chinese border, the Burmese border guards immediately followed suit and increased the checkpoints. For a time, both sides were in a state of panic, and the drug dealers who secretly transported drugs didn't dare to risk their lives. Lena still hadn't received any information about the cooperation between the Shan State Police and the Chinese police. The next night, an important guest came to the village. Lena personally accompanied this important guest to visit the drug manufacturing factory in the village. Brother Kuan, give me 2 more days and I could deliver all the goods to you. Look at the purity. It's even better than the pure color I sent abroad. I've been working with you for many years, and you've always taken care of me. I don't want to disappoint you with shoddy goods. There was a layer of white powder in the small piece of paper. This was the absorbent powder produced by Lena's drug manufacturing factory. She handed the paper to Wu Jinkuan, who had countless fine scars on his face. Wu Jinkuan was from the Burmese Kachin tribe. He was cruel but loyal. It was because of this loyalty that he was persecuted by General Min Lai, who he used to think of as a brother. He even lost his position as a warlord and became a drug lord in the Golden Triangle. The thin, crisscrossing scars on his face were all caused by the thorns when he was escaping from the mountains. His face was like a broken fishnet, crisscrossing and crisscrossing. He and General Min Lai were the same age, in their early 40s. Their faces were ferocious. Even when they smiled, they were so fierce that people didn't dare to look at them directly. He took the paper and looked at the woman who was still pretending to be obedient in front of him. He sneered in his heart and smiled as usual. He dipped his finger in the powder and rubbed it carefully. Not bad, it's good stuff. You've always been good at things, and I've always been assured. I brought you a business deal this time. Someone will come later. Prepare some good stuff and hand it over tonight. We'll get the big order together. Lena was overjoyed and politely invited Wu Jinquan out with a smile. A bodyguard who had been following her walked over and gave her a look and shook his head slightly. This was to tell Lena that everything was normal and that Wu Jinquan didn't suspect anything. Yi Qian came in with a plate of fruit. When he saw Wu Jinquan, his eyes darkened and even his footsteps slowed down. Wu Jinquan came over. He glanced at the two sides of the hall. One of them was a bodyguard whom he had met once in a temple filled with fake monks. They were both Chinese spies. At this moment, he was standing on Wu Jinquan's side. Yi Qian glanced over. The other party seemed to have been waiting. Suddenly, he lowered his eyes and glanced at the fruit platter in her hands. Yi Qian looked down and retracted her gaze. She saw his palms clenched downwards. Lowering his eyes, Yi Qian's footsteps became lighter and slower, so much so that even his footsteps bent. As she walked, the petite girl who had been targeting Yi Qian fiercely bumped into her. Caught off guard, Yi Qian was hit by her, and the fruit plate in his hand flew out. With a bang, the plate shattered and the fruits scattered everywhere. How could you be so careless? The skinny girl who did this on purpose didn't wait for Lena to reprimand her. Instead, she took the initiative to kneel down and complain. Lena's expression had already turned very ugly. She glanced at the scattered fruit platter and glared at Yi Qian with a dark gaze. You can't even do such a small thing. What's the use of keeping your hands? The skinny girl who had knelt down and admitted her mistake pressed her body even tighter. She lowered her head and smiled coldly. Let's see how she's going to deal with this. It would be best if she chopped off her hands and became a cripple. Lena wouldn't put a cripple in an important position. Chapter 4726. The girl who always went against Yi Qian was Burmese. Ever since the day she and another girl failed to snatch the pancake from Yi Qian's hands, she had been wary of Yi Qian ever since. She vaguely felt that Yi Qian was the biggest threat to her survival. As it turned out, she didn't overthink it. Ever since they were all released and trained by Lena, she was always outclassed by the girls abducted from China. She thought that she was smart enough to get rid of the Chinese girls who were rarely punished by Sister Lena. She even tried many tricks, but none of them succeeded. Every trick was seen through by Lena. If she hadn't been smart enough to clean up the mess, she would have been the one to suffer. And Yi Qian didn't pursue the matter because they were both in the same boat. Thinking about it, she didn't have it easy either. In order to survive, she had no choice but to let go of her little tricks even though she saw through them. Yi Qian always knew that although the girl kneeling on the ground looked thin and weak, she was actually quite cunning. Otherwise, she wouldn't have used her to break the fruit platter. The skinny girl thought that she could use this opportunity to get Lena to cripple Yi Qian. Little did she know that everything was just Yi Qian's plan to lure her into action. After Lena finished speaking, she raised her hand and had someone drag Yi Qian out. Yi Qian was so frightened that he fell to his knees with a thud. He trembled and didn't dare to say a word. The more he said, the more mistakes he would make. It was best not to say anything. Since the Chinese spy who came with Wu Jinquan indicated for her to break the fruit platter, she did as she was told. Very quickly, the other party whispered something into Wu Jinquan's ear. Wu Jinquan's eyes, which were as small as a mouse's, shone brightly in the dark. His cold gaze swept across the two girls kneeling on the ground. He looked at Lena and said, "My bodyguard said that the plate of fruit was broken by the person who was kneeling first. In my opinion, we should cripple her hands first." Lena did not see it. She thought that Yi Qian had been careless and was pointed out by Wu Jinquan. She was already embarrassed and felt as if Wu Jinquan had stepped on her a few times. Her beautiful eyes were dark and ruthless. She clenched her teeth and shouted, "Drag the two of them away and make them kneel beneath the sun." The skinny little girl who had the intention to harm Yi Qian heard this, and her eyes rolled back in fear. She trembled and wanted to say something, but when she thought of Lena's character, her face turned ashen and her body went limp. Two men wearing Burmese costumes and carrying rifles on their shoulders came in and grabbed the girls by the hair and dragged them out of the room. "Ah, it hurts, it hurts." Their hair was pulled and dragged away, and the screams of the girls could be heard all the way. The bodyguard standing behind Wu Jinquan moved his fingers slightly, lowered his eyes, and stood respectfully. Yi Qian, whose scalp was almost peeled off, used his hands to protect his head. He was in so much pain that tears streamed down his face. She did not resist and allowed them to drag her. In this place, she was used to being dragged around by people. The skinny little girl, who had been screaming in pain, glared fiercely at Yi Qian after being dragged away for a while. She had a deep enmity towards Yi Qian. Even when she was screaming in pain, she did not forget to curse him. "Don't think that you can be proud just because I was dragged out. You were the one who broke the fruit platter. Sister Lena said herself that she would cripple your hands. Just you wait." Her enmity was so deep that Yi Qian did not have the heart to resolve it. Chapter 47:27. The fruit platter was smashed, and the person was also dragged out. Then, what would the undercover narcotics police do next if the person indicated that he had smashed the fruit platter? He would probably come looking for her, right? Also, why did he want her to smash the fruit platter? She didn't quite understand the undercover narcotics intentions. She didn't know if he had news from Captain Deng, and she didn't know what the situation was like outside. She also didn't know when they would take action. It had been almost half a month since she had sent out the news. With the police's ability to take action, they should have taken action by now. Yi Qian, who was thinking about these things, didn't even care about the pain in his scalp. It was impossible for him to pay attention to what the skinny girl was saying. This made the girl even angrier. Of the 5 girls who had been locked up together, only 2 were left. The 2 girls who had been taken care of by Lena had already turned into a pile of bones. The elder sister who had lived for her younger sister had become a tool in Lena's hands and was being sent to some unknown place. The Burmese girl who had been targeting Yi Qian all this time also didn't know what Lena had said, but her hostility towards Yi Qian grew deeper day by day. Yi Qian didn't want to argue with her, but that didn't mean they could get along with each other peacefully. Seeing Yi Qian ignoring her like this, the girl clenched her teeth and her eyes gradually filled with killing intent. "Don't be so smug. Just you wait. Just you wait." Ah! The girl's back was scraped by a sharp stone, and a bloody wound appeared on her back. Her face twisted in pain, and she finally shut up. As for the Burmese man who was dragging her away, he was still dragging her away and didn't let her go. The Burmese girl who had bloody wounds on her back no longer had the mood to glare at Yi Qian. She cried out in pain and loudly begged the Burmese man who was dragging her away. "I'll walk on my own. I'll walk on my own. Please don't drag me away. It hurts, it really hurts." It was so painful that she felt like her head was going to be pulled out. Yi Qian, whose back had also been cut by a sharp stone, tried to calm himself down. Once he focused his attention, the pain in his scalp was also unbearable. Yi Qian suddenly felt a sharp, killing intent. His brows furrowed in pain as he looked at the Burmese girl who was deeply hostile towards him. Now, not only was she hostile, but she also wanted to kill him. She actually wanted to kill her? Yi Qian's eyes darkened, and he said in a hoarse voice, "Maman, don't even think about escaping Sister Lena's punishment since you've harmed me." "Idiot! What did you say? What did you say? Say it again." The Burmese girl, Maman, seemed to be greatly agitated. She grabbed the man's wrist with both hands and kicked Yi Qian crazily. "It's you, it's all your fault. It's your own stupidity for not holding the fruit platter properly. If I am punished, I will not let you off. Just you wait. What are you screaming for? You're courting death." The Burmese man who was dragging Ma Min away was very impatient. He stopped and kicked Ma Min's waist. The pain almost made Ma Min faint. "It's all because of that Chinese girl. It's all because of her. It was all her fault. Why wouldn't she die? Why wouldn't she die? It hurt. She was in so much pain. She had to kill the Chinese girl who was valued by Sister Lena. Sister Lena said that she only wanted people who were useful, and she preferred people who were more ruthless. For those who were useless, cowardly, or worse than others, there was only one outcome: death. It wasn't easy for her to survive, so how could she let herself die? She didn't want to die, so only the Chinese girl could die. The skinny girl didn't feel that she had done anything wrong. If she didn't want to die, then others would die. Just like Sister Lena, she was the only one who killed others, and no one dared to kill her. Chapter 4728. Only by becoming someone like Sister Lena would she be able to survive better. The Burmese girl, Maman, had a pained expression as she thought to herself. The screams outside gradually faded away. Wu Jinquan, who came to seek revenge, coldly glanced at the woman who was facing him. She pretended not to feel guilty at all. He said to the person beside him with sarcasm, "Take a few people and guard outside. I'm worried that I'll throw my spear out the next time. It's best if you ask them who ordered them to throw things in front of me." Lena's cheeks twitched. What did he mean? He used to smile at her every time he came to the village. Why was there something wrong today? Could it be that he found out something? Lena's heart sank. She smiled and said in a sweet voice, "Brother Kuan, you must be joking. We've worked together for so many years. Don't you know me? Brother Kuan, don't worry. There won't be a next time." Although she was speaking coquettishly, her heart was not calm at all. Seeing Wu Jinquan's gloomy face, a trace of nervousness flashed through her eyes. Wu Jinquan was a ruthless person that even the general was afraid of. Suddenly, he came to her village. Was he really here for cooperation? But why did he come all of a sudden? Why didn't he contact her in advance like before? Wu Jinquan, who had been tricked by a woman for years, did not want to say anything more to the people under his enemy, Min Lai. He waved his hand and asked the two bodyguards behind him to go out and ask. Lena, who was stepped on again, felt a burning pain on her face. Her smile faded a little. "Brother Kuan, it's my people who threw the plates. Brother Kuan, you wouldn't think that I ordered them to do it, right? You'll know if it's my people or not." "Why? Don't you dare?" "Why wouldn't I dare? Brother Kuan's people, go ahead and ask." Lena clearly wanted to crush the plate, but she still had to maintain a smile and let Wu Jinquan's people go out. "Come back and tell me after you ask." Wu Jinquan signaled his people to go out. The bodyguards who came out were none other than the Chinese spy who brought the news to Yiqian. The two bodyguards nodded slightly. When they came out, they even took out the pistols at their waists. Their intention was self-evident. Lena's face immediately darkened. She couldn't help but clench her hands on the armrests of the bamboo chair. Her beautiful eyes were dark and unclear. She calmly said, "Brother Kuan, what do you mean? Have you forgotten the rules of the stockade?" "I didn't forget. I'm just worried that it won't be peaceful here, so I have to be on guard." Wu Jinquan used to be a warlord, and he had fought with the Burmese government before. Therefore, he didn't put Lena in his eyes. In the past, he had given the other party some face because they were working together. But now, he would not give the other party any face. His words made Lena's heart sink. "Brother Kuan, if you have something to say, please say it." As the bamboo door closed, the voices inside were also cut off. The two bodyguards walked out and saw the girl kneeling under the sun. One of the bodyguards sneered and said, "Golden Triangle Sister Lena's methods are really vicious. Not many girls like flowers can live long in her hands. She's beautiful but cruel. No wonder Brother Kuan sometimes reminds his subordinates to learn from Sister Lena." The undercover anti-narcotics agent from the Chinese side took out a cigarette from his pocket. The lighter made a ding sound, and a cluster of blue flame came out from the cigarette in his mouth. He took a deep puff of the cigarette and blew out a string of milky white smoke rings. His eyes indifferently looked at the girl kneeling under the sun. "Brother Kuan wants to know who ordered them to break the plates. I'll go and ask now." Chapter 4729. That be asterisk TCH Lena isn't being honest. She even smashed the fruit platter in front of Brother Kuan today. Who knows if she was purposely giving orders to her subordinates? Keep a close eye on this place. If anything happens, immediately tell Brother Cohen. This is someone else's territory. No matter how familiar you are, you still have to be careful. After he finished speaking, he walked directly towards Yi Qian, who was kneeling under the scorching sun with a cigarette in his mouth. The undercover anti-narcotics police officer signaled Yi Qian to smash the fruit platter for a certain reason. First, it was to test him. Second, it was to see if the other party was sensitive enough to understand his intentions. After all, the two of them still had to work together to leave this place tonight. Third, and most importantly, Lena was a cunning and cautious person. If he rashly came into contact with a female soldier, she would definitely be suspicious. He was afraid that he would implicate the female soldier, so he had to have an excuse to come into contact with her. Fourth, he suggested to Wu Jinquan to see if he could instigate the people around Lena to make their plan easier for tonight. Now, he could directly walk towards the female soldier and not be suspected by Lena. At the same time, the first test also gave him more confidence. It was a very simple test, and he saw that the female soldier was indeed very sensitive, just as Captain Deng said. She immediately understood simple movements. When he walked over, he was blocked by Lena's subordinates. The undercover anti-narcotics police officer continuously blew smoke rings and swung his pistol with one hand. He said something, and the two people who were blocking him reluctantly moved aside. The sun in June was very strong. It was so hot that the leaves wilted and curled up. Even the ground was scorching hot. Yi Qian knelt with his hands tied behind his back. He felt that the blood slowly flowing from his back was slowly solidified by the sun. Even the wound was no longer bleeding. The dazzling white sunlight was blocked by a shadow. Yi Qian's shoulders trembled as he timidly raised his head. A ray of fire that was even hotter than the sun flashed past his bright black eyes. He glanced at Yi Qian. He didn't say anything, but he had already secretly made a hand gesture. Calm down. Yi Qian's eyes moved slightly. He saw the undercover anti-narcotics police officer standing in front of him walk towards Ma Min. He forced Ma Min's chin up with the cold black muzzle of his pistol and asked her in a tense voice, "Who ordered you to push people and smash the fruit platter in front of Brother Cohen?" She had been undercover for many years, and she had been an undercover agent for the anti-narcotics police. She was so scared that her teeth were trembling. She didn't even have the courage to speak. "Tell me quickly, otherwise I'll kill you." With a loud shout, Ma Min was so scared that she lost control of her bladder on the spot. She didn't even take a breath before her eyes rolled back, and she fainted. Narcotics police. She actually fainted before they could ask anything. She got up and kicked Ma Min with her foot. She stared at her face and confirmed that she had really fainted. Only then did she walk over to Yi Qian. Yi Qian did not raise his head again. Instead, he pretended to be afraid and tried to shift his kneeling position. In front of him, Lena's men were watching closely. They even secretly reached for their rifles, ready to fire at any moment. The anti-narcotics police officer squatted in front of Yi Qian. He didn't point the muzzle of his gun at Yi Qian's chin. He spoke one sentence in a high pitch and one in a low pitch. The high pitch was to interrogate Yi Qian about who ordered him to smash the fruit platter. The low pitch was to gently inform Yi Qian about everything that had happened outside. Lena's black lines that were used to smuggle people into our country have all been destroyed. At the same time, we have obtained a large amount of evidence of Min Lai's crimes. Congratulations, Xiao Yi. Your mission has been completed. Wu Jinquan's intention this time is to eliminate Lena tonight. The people he brought have already secretly infiltrated the stockade. Tonight, you and I will cooperate to escape. We can return to our country. Yi Qian gently closed his eyes after listening to the anti-narcotics police officer's words. After being undercover for more than 4 months, she could finally escape tonight. She had been looking forward to tonight. The Burmese girl who had fainted next to her trembled slightly. She secretly curled her fingers. Why did she feel like she saw Chinese people talking in her ear? Chapter 4730. Maman's breathing was a little heavier, and her expression didn't change. She didn't even move, but Yi Qian noticed it immediately. The sun was shining brightly, and the chirping of the cicadas seemed to be roasted by the sun. Even their chirping lost its energy. Yi Qian, who was kneeling, was also kicked to the ground. Maman, who had just woken up, saw it and felt very good. You dare to throw things in front of Brother Cohen? You two are the first. Feel the heads on your necks, and see how long you can stay there. The undercover officer who stood up raised his leg again and kicked Yi Qian's waist. It looked like he used a lot of strength, but in fact the tip of his shoe was only kicked into the ground. The back of his foot only grazed Yi Qian's waist and didn't hurt Yi Qian at all. From Maman's point of view, she only knew that the Chinese girl she wanted to get rid of was kicked again. The more she was beaten, the happier she was. Under the scorching sun, even if she smelled of urine, Maman could still laugh in her heart. Happy, really happy. She liked to see Chinese girls get beaten. Ha ha ha. To compete with her? You're asking for death. Maman, a girl from the Kachin tribe in the mountains of Myanmar. The Kachin tribe in Myanmar loved to fight and had produced countless heroes. Both men and women had a bloodlust in their bones, and Maman's mountain village made a living by hunting. That bloodlust was stimulated at a young age. In the face of danger, Maman's first thought was how to survive. She wanted to live well, to stand out, and to live well like Lena, who could control other people's lives. Yi Qian's existence was an obstacle that prevented her from living well. She had to get rid of him. When she opened her eyes and saw Yi Qian being kicked twice, Maman waited for the undercover officer who had scared her to leave before she dared to laugh. How does it feel to be beaten? Is it very comfortable? Ha ha, ha ha. There's something even more comfortable waiting for you. Just wait, just wait. You can't escape. Ha ha ha. You can't escape. Her voice was sharp, like a small stone scraping the ground under a wooden door. It was so sharp that it hurt people's eardrums. She had heard someone speaking Chinese in a daze, but other than the only person who could speak Chinese, there was no one else around her. Then who was she talking to just now? Speaking Chinese to the man who just left? Did they know each other? Mama became excited. If they knew each other, then could it be said that this guy was dishonest? Ha ha ha, sister Lena like him. She thought of a way to get rid of this guy in front of her as soon as possible. Yi Jian, who has long been accustomed to Maman's hostility, struggles to kneel properly again. She knows that if Lena doesn't see her kneeling properly when she comes out, she will definitely be beaten again. Tonight, she would be able to leave this man-eating place. She needed to maintain her current state. She couldn't add another wound to her body to avoid delaying matters. And that the Burmese girl in front of her, Maman, wanted to kill her. Yi Qian struggled for a long time, but still couldn't get up. She gave herself some time to breathe. She glanced at Maman coldly and made a very difficult choice. Keeping Maman alive would be a disaster. Everything she had done had been assimilated by this darkness. To her, human life was no different from stepping on an ant. The assimilated Maman, could she still keep her? Chapter 4731. Yi Qian sighed heavily as she made a difficult decision. She closed her eyes because of the blinding sunlight. She couldn't keep her alive. It was best to get rid of Maman before getting rid of Lena. Yi Qian was kidnapped along with her, and they both had a hard life. In the end, she had to get rid of Maman herself. No one knew the pain in her heart. As for General Min Lai, she could only leave it to the Burmese government. He didn't commit any crimes directly in China. Everything was done by his subordinates. Even if China had countless evidence of General Min Lai's crimes, China still had no right to punish him. Not getting rid of General Min Lai was equivalent to getting rid of the biggest cancer. Without Lena working for him, General Min Lai had a lot of drug dealers working for him. Getting rid of Lena would affect General Min Lai, but it wouldn't affect his foundation. Unless it was an assassination. Assassinating General Min Lai was easier said than done. Even the special forces of the Snowfield Brigade might not be able to get rid of him. It was difficult for China to deal with Min Lai. Leaving it to the Burmese government was the only and best choice. The sun at noon began to move away slowly. Yi Jian, who had been exposed to the sun for a long time, had dark brown blood on her lips. Her throat was dry and itchy. She knelt motionlessly. Without Lena's order, no one came to pull her up. The production of drugs was in full swing. A large number of drugs were produced, processed, and sold all over the world. Batch after batch of drug addicts became General Min Lai's best money-making tools to support his troops. A Burmese man with a gun on his back hurriedly opened the wooden door of the largest bamboo house in the village. Sunlight poured into the shady bamboo house through the door frame. The light cut through the darkness in the bamboo house and illuminated Lena's seductive face. The man first bowed to Lena, then to Wu Jinquan. He pretended to be calm as he walked to Lena's side and leaned down to whisper a few words in her ear. Lena's hands on the armrest suddenly clenched. Her seductive eyes flashed with malice. Tell them not to move for the time being. Kill all the human goods in the places they discover and leave immediately. Don't leave any traces. Get rid of all the new goods that you've received. There's no need to send them into the village. Get rid of all the human goods that haven't arrived yet. Don't leave a single one alive. Human goods refer to the girls who were trained by Lena to sell drugs. New goods referred to girls who had been abducted but had not yet been sent to the stronghold. Now, Lena had to completely deal with the human goods and new goods in order to avoid being caught by the police of other countries and being exposed. Yes, the Burmese man nodded. Thinking of the two human goods kneeling outside, the man asked a few more questions. Lena, who was sitting in the bamboo hut and discussing matters with Wu Jinquan, was so angry that she was about to crush the bamboo armrest with her hands. Her secret network of human traffickers, which had brought her great benefits and was the foundation of her standing in front of General Min Lai, had been destroyed. First, China, followed by Thailand, and then, is it Myanmar? Laos? Right now, the most important thing wasn't to feel pity that her secret agent had been exposed. The most important thing was that she couldn't let anyone discover her existence. All human goods had to die. Even the new goods that hadn't arrived yet had to die. Cut the grass without leaving the roots. As for the other two, Lena glanced at Wu Jinquan and slowly loosened her grip on the armrest. A dark and gloomy light slowly rose in her eyes and then slowly sank. Why not do him a favor? Chapter 4732. In just a few seconds, Lena's emotions were fluctuating as she came up with one plan after another. With just a raise of her hand, who knew how many lives would be lost at her hands? Yi Qian and Maman became the luckiest two people. Because Wu Jinquan was dissatisfied with the fruit platter, Lena took the opportunity to coax Wu Jinquan with the lives of two people. To them, human lives were just tools that could be used and not used. They would keep them when they were useful and dispose of them when they were not. They never hesitated. Her red lips curved slightly, and she said, "Lock them up and wait for Brother Kuan to deal with them." She definitely couldn't keep them alive, but she needed their deaths to be more valuable. Yes, the man with the spear on his back nodded and quickly left the bamboo house. Wu Jinquan played with the bamboo wine cup in his hand, which was overflowing with the aroma of wine. A playful smile flashed across his small eyes. It seemed that the bitch finally knew what was going on outside. Min Lai, that treacherous old thing, obviously knew in advance, but he didn't tell the bitch. It was obvious that he treated her as a waste. If the bitch hadn't been so cruel to the people he sent out that she didn't even leave a complete corpse, he might have kept her alive to see if she could deal with that bastard Min Lai. What a pity. Although the bitch was beautiful and he had a little interest in her, she didn't leave herself a way out. She thought that everything would be fine if she hooked up with that bastard Min Lai and could stabilize her position in the core area of the Golden Triangle. Tonight he would let her see if that bastard would back her up. Without Wu Jinquan's face, could she live well in the Golden Triangle? Other than the Black Widow, no other woman could really stand in the Golden Triangle. All of them had a backer behind them. The bitch wanted to learn from the Black Widow. She was overestimating herself. After drinking all the spicy wine in the bamboo cup, Wu Jinkuin's eyes flashed with murderous intent. For his 30 dead brothers, Lena must die. Chop off her limbs, chop off her waist, chop off her head, and bring it back to the stockade to tell his brothers that he, Wu Jinkuin, had avenged their dead brothers. Although Wu Jinkuin was a drug lord, he was quite affectionate and righteous. Otherwise, he would not have been able to make a comeback after being defeated and become one of the biggest drug lords in the Golden Triangle. Wu Jinkuin pretended that he didn't know anything and continued to talk about business. Although he had arranged everything, Lena, who had been feeling uneasy, began to feel restless. She wanted to get up and leave several times, but she was worried that Wu Jinkuin would find out that she was in contact with General Minlai. She forced a smile and tried to get Wu Jinkuin drunk. The tightly shut bamboo door opened again. Yi Qian saw the man with the spear on his back, who had gone in 3 minutes ago, come out again. Even though there was a certain distance between them, Yi Qian could still sense the man's anxiety. When a man looked in the direction where they were kneeling, he gave a few orders to the people beside him. 2 of his subordinates, who also had guns on their backs, raised their heads and looked in their direction. They nodded slightly and strode towards them. As a special forces soldier, Yi Qian's heart suddenly tightened. Xing Se hurried in, and when she came out, the first thing she did was look at them, and then she immediately ordered people to drag them away. Yi Qian's heart tightened, and even her breathing became sluggish for a moment. Something's wrong, something's wrong. Something's very wrong. No one would tell a person who was about to die what would happen next. In their eyes, these 2 human goods were goods. Now that the goods had become worthless waste, it was up to them to deal with them. The 10-meter-deep hole in the back of the mountain was only half filled. It seemed that 2 more bodies would be filled tonight. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.